Good evening. I'm going to call the Board of Selectmen's meeting for Monday, March 21st, 2022 to order. Could I get a motion to go into executive session?
I move that we go into executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss with respect to collective bargaining for all town unions, and the chair has determined that open session would have a detrimental effect on the town's bargaining position.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Only comment is we will return to open session no later than 6:30. Roll call vote, Larry?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Larry?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Call the Board of Selectmen's meeting for Monday, March 21st, 2022 back to order. We started tonight's meeting in executive session where we talked about collective bargaining for all town unions. No decision was made. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Quick comment under new business, letter I, Cape Cod Regional Technical High School budget and Monomoy Regional budget. We will not be discussing those tonight. We voted the tech budget last Thursday night, and we're waiting for more information from Monomoy. Public comment and announcement. Joe, do you have one?
Just, Mr. Chairman, a reminder to everybody that the last day to register to vote for the local town election, the annual town election, which is held Tuesday, May 17th, 2022. Last day to register to vote is Tuesday, April 12th by 8 p.m.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment and announcement? I'm going to take one thing out of order on the agenda. Before we go to the presentation, we're going to go to consent agenda. Item B, vote to approve the appointment of one full-time police officer. Chief?
Come on up, Tom. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Dave Clement, Chief of Police. I'd like you to meet Tom Radzik. He is on your consent agenda for appointment as a full-time police officer. And it's important to note that I'm saying full-time police officer because he actually already is a full-time police officer, or was, in another community. I'll get to that in a minute. But Tom comes to us with academy training and police experience from Provincetown Police Department. He actually lives in the town of Harwich. So it's extremely fortunate for us that he has expressed interest in Harwich Police Department because, as you know, I've been coming up every other week announcing retirements. We are right now, as we stand here, we're down 5 officers. So Tom is going to be able to come on board rather quickly. He's going to, after, God willing, your approval of his appointment tonight, he'll go into a very abbreviated field training program and be on the schedule for us, probably in a matter of weeks. So we're really excited to have Tom coming aboard and to actually not have to send him to a police academy, which at this point in time for me and the officers we're looking at that are coming in the door behind him will probably be in the fall. So Tom also has a bachelor's degree in criminal justice management. So, we're really looking forward to bringing him on board and extremely happy that he expressed interest in the town of Harwich Police Department.
Great. Thank you. Can I get a motion, and then we will...
I move that we vote to approve the appointment of Thomas Radzik as a full-time police officer
On the recommendation of the
upon
chief.
the recommendation of Chief Gilman.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
None.
Roll call vote. Don?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Larry?
Aye, and welcome.
I'm an aye, and welcome. Joe, anything you want to say?
I already met the officer in the hallway and tried to intimidate him. It didn't work, so welcome aboard. Great to have you, officer.
Welcome aboard. Thank you. Okay, we're going to go back to presentations and swimming pool initiative. So wherever you're most comfortable, this table or the podium, wherever you'd like to be.
Hello, everyone.
Welcome.
Aye.
My name is Sue Cantonio. I am a local resident and parent of Harwich Elementary School and Monomoy Middle. My daughter in middle school is a competitive swimmer, which is what brought this kind of to my attention back when COVID started. And I've come more and more to find that there's really a lot of want for a community pool down in the Lower Cape. And I think we've all seen it with Eastham, Chatham, Brewster, and the Sea Camps. And come to do some research, looking at the old plans, the old notes, and the community center was originally planned to have an expansion out the back, I believe with a 6-lane, 25-yard. I would love the blessing or permission to kind of pursue this further and research it with the community center director and whatever town members. I have no idea what the proper next step is. I believe there'd probably be a feasibility study, and honestly, I'd love to see something regional if possible, because I believe that with all these Lower Cape towns wanting this, there's a need, but I don't think every town could sustain their own. Obviously, it's a very expensive endeavor to maintain, to construct, and all the above. I know there's a lot involved with the programming and the need to cross that from the young kids with water safety all the way up to the seniors and therapy. And I've done a little bit of online training with Total Aquatics programming along that front, and there's so many exciting opportunities out there, but it's got to start with having a building with a pool in it. So I figured I would come to you and ask what to do next and what we could pull together.
Great, thank you. Sue and I have exchanged probably 100 emails. And
He's
she's
kinda done
shared
with me right now.
shared a lot of information with me. So I just start with questions and comments from Larry.
You're right. The community center originally had the idea of doing that, and periodically over the years, as you suggested in the email, we've looked at it, and it's too much, frankly, too much money. I appreciate your efforts, because I think at this point it would take a groundswell of local volunteers to get it going and raise money,
Yeah.
make it happen. And the regional approach is ideal, so good luck with it.
Awesome.
Julie?
I love the idea. I wanted a pool ages ago as well. I mean, so I'm grateful.
We just need a couple $1 million.
Yeah,
so
exactly. Exactly. If Angelo was here, we could ask him for. But I think it's great that you're willing to take on the initiative if you are, and I think it will take a huge collaboration regionally, to Larry's point. But I would love to see it happen, and I do think there's a need. So I appreciate you looking into it further.
Mary?
I also am in favor, and it was nice to have something in the packet that someone's offering to do something. It's a little refreshing, so that'd be great. I don't know of any roadblock to you pursuing getting, by being here tonight and having it televised, you'll get some more interested players to help you with it.
Don?
Mine's more on the practical side. I remember my grandmother was a matron at a county pool in Westchester County. The operating costs are far bigger than the building costs, but I would strongly suggest, because this has come up a bunch of times, if you're going to want to think about this regionally, try to partner with the YMCA and because they're looking to do exactly the same kind of thing.
Right.
They don't have a robust presence anywhere below Barnstable, where the college is. So they've been casting about to try to look for land. If there's a way for them to partner to actually operate the pool in coordination with the town and defraying the cost so it's not part of our budget, I think that would be an ideal way of approaching that. And they're already looking to do the same kind of thing, so it would be a likely partner.
Makes sense.
And I'm for it as well, so I think the consensus is you have a blessing to move forward with more study. Joe, I would suggest maybe a meeting with administration, and so we can get an idea of feasibility studies and maybe some contacts with other towns.
Sure.
I know some have done, I think, I don't know if Eastham's gone as far as the full feasibility, but they did a hard survey. They came back with a tea time property and I guess a majority vote for a 50-yard, which would be terrific, but, also even more expensive, so understandable.
So I'll work with you as we get more information, and then we'll update the board as we go, but I'd start with a meeting with the administrator.
Awesome.
Great.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, and
Thank
thanks
Have
for
a
the
good
mission.
evening.
Consent agenda, the rest of it?
Okay. I move that we vote to approve the consent agenda with several items.
Hang on one second.
Yep.
There is 3 seats up front here, if anyone wants to come up front and sit. Go ahead.
First item, to approve the appointment of Jennifer Harrington, Animal Inspector, term May 1, 2022 to April 30, 2023. Second, to approve a Caleb Chase Award in the amount of $870. Another Caleb Chase Award in the amount of $1,000. Another Caleb Chase Award in the amount of $543. Another Caleb Chase Award in the amount of $923.20. Another Caleb Chase Award in the amount of $1,000. And another Caleb Chase Award in the amount of $629. Next, to approve an owner's local initiative program refinance request for their home at 12 Gomes Way. And last, vote to approve the following Board of Selectmen meeting minutes: July 20th, 2020, November 23rd, 2020, and September 7th, 2021.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Joe?
Just for clarification, item I, the refinance request, it would be to authorize the chair to sign.
That was part of the motion?
That's
That was
correct.
part of the
Part
second. Yep.
Thank you. Don?
Here, okay, we'll start with that one. These are kind of pro forma requests. If somebody wants to refinance because of the covenants that were developed on the Gomes Way project, which was ours, we had that built, it requires the approval to do it. And it would be kind of sad if we didn't approve it with the current interest rates, because that's a big help. The other thing I would note, which is segues right into that, it's kind of sad that we just are approving 6 Caleb Chase requests, because they don't come here capriciously. That means people are hurting. So I'm sorry to see that we have to actually do this.
Thank you, Don. Any other comments?
No.
Roll call vote. Don?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Larry?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. New business, discussion and possible vote to place the non-binding question regarding withdrawing any plans to discharge any radioactive water into Cape Cod Bay on the 2022 annual town election warrant. I did see Diane Turco come in.
No, she's on the screen, but can she talk?
She can talk, yes.
I don't know if she knows how to do it. She said she didn't see a hand to raise her.
Yeah, we don't have hands. We just flail our hands. There she is. Good evening. Diane, did you want to speak?
Yes.
The mic is
Everyone
yours.
does. Yes. Sorry. Anyway, presented a non-binding. I hear myself. Is that okay for you guys?
I can hear you.
Okay. This is a non-binding public advisory question, calling on the Holtec Pilgrim Corporation to not dump radioactive wastewater into Cape Cod Bay. I'm sure you've all heard about it in the news. Right now, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, which is the federal oversight agency, has said that they can dump. That's okay, and they don't even preview the material before it's dumped into the bay. They only review it afterwards. So we're really concerned that this is the cheapest and quickest method for Holtec to get rid of that contaminated water. So we have presented this petition in towns across the Cape and on Martha's Vineyard. Most of the, we're getting all the towns basically to sign on to have this as a non-binding public advisory question to allow the public to have a voice in trying to stop this incredible damage that would happen to our communities. And as you all know, Cape Cod Bay is a federal and state protected area. It would damage the livelihoods of all the fishermen, the shell fishermen, real estate. The National Academy of Sciences has determined there's no safe dose of this ionizing radiation. And in fact, the Environmental Protection Agency said that the level of dose that would not cause harm to humans is 0. So it just can't go into the bay. The state, Vermont Yankee has decided to ship their water to a facility in Idaho where they package it with a clay kind of substance and then contain it. So it has to be contained from the environment. So this is an opportunity for us to vote as a community to say, we're going to protect our bay, we're going to protect our communities and the livelihoods of the fishing industry and the tourist industry, and tell Holtec you can't dump here.
Thank you. Joe, you want to add? We had a brief conversation earlier about the format of this now.
Yes, so two things, Mr. Chairman. You should see in your packet the portion of the petition that outlines the substance of the question. I asked John Giorgio, our counsel, how the ballot question would look, and he recommends that if the board adds it, it would start with the first whereas Cape Cod Bay and continue on all the way down through the question that ends with Cape Cod Bay. So the only question we have is if the petitioner has a Word version that we can use, just because we want to make sure we capture it completely, and we don't want to have any scrivener's errors if that's what the board intends to do.
Diane, do you have a Word version of that for us?
Yes, I can send that along, yes.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the board? Don?
We already had an initial discussion on this. I'm absolutely in favor of supporting the initiative.
Mary?
I am as well in favor.
Larry?
I'm going to abstain on this vote.
Julie?
I'm in favor.
Can I get a motion?
Yeah. I move that we vote to place the non-binding question regarding withdrawing any plans to discharge any radioactive water into Cape Cod Bay on the 2022 annual town election warrant.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further comment from the board? Joe?
Just procedurally, it should also include as presented.
As presented.
That was my second.
Thank you. Anyone in the public wish to comment? Stand up to that podium and state your name for the record, please. You're welcome to sit here as well if you want.
Oh, no. Hi, I'm Rosemary Shields. I'm with the League of Women Voters of the Cape Cod area, and just want to say that the League of Women Voters of the Cape Cod area and Plymouth are entirely in favor of this, and we want to thank you for considering this and that you want to do this. I have been going to the NDCAP meetings, that's the Nuclear Decommissioning Citizen Advisory Panel, for the last 3 years. And a lot of the stuff that we found out about the Holtec company and what they're doing, they're just cutting corners and just trying, it looks like they're trying to get out of town by 2027. And that means we're just going to be left with whatever they have. And they have nuclear waste in dry casks. But this dumping of the water in Cape Cod Bay is just an indication of this New Jersey company, small company, that even Maura Healey, the Attorney General, doesn't think they have the financial wherewithal to do a really good job. We're just very, very concerned about that, and we just want, as soon as we tell people that they want to dump 1 million gallons of radioactive water into the bay, people are appalled. And also the EPA has sent them a very strong letter saying, you can't dump anywhere until you tell us the other stuff that is in this water. So the EPA is totally behind this. So anyway, the League of Women Voters and other citizens groups are behind this. And thank you for giving me this time.
Thank you. Anyone else?
My name is Elaine Dickinson. I live in Harwich. I'm a member of the Cape Town Winders, which Diane Turco is our leader, and I'm also with the Cape Cod League of Women Voters with Rosemary. And we have been traveling to Plymouth for these nuclear decommissioning citizens advisory panels, and they are unbelievable. Anyway, there are 2 people on there that are basically see the light, and that's encouraging. But for the citizen advisory part of it, it's crazy. So getting all the towns on the Cape, Martha's Vineyard, to get this on their ballot and get all the people in the Cape waking up, it's important, and we appreciate your vote for it. The Cape Cod, the Provincetown Independent has been running articles by Christine Legere, who used to be with the Cape Cod Times, talking all about the science behind it. And when stuff gets dumped in the bay, the way the currents are, it gets into the sediment, it gets on the beaches. And a lot of that stuff, like the tritium, it doesn't dissolve, it doesn't go away. Eating the food, the fishermen have been at these, before the last NDCAP meeting, we had a big speak out with lots of the public there. And fishermen, lobstermen, indigenous, people who are involved in the tourism, I mean, it's like, nobody wants this. So Harwich is doing the right thing here. And I applaud you, okay? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Okay, it's been moved and
I just
seconded.
want to say thank you
You're
so
welcome.
much for the board for supporting this initiative.
Yeah, you might want to wait for a vote till you thank us.
Hey, all right.
Thank you, Don. Roll call vote, Don?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Larry?
And I abstain.
And I'm an aye. 4-0-1. Joe. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Do you want a motion on B, or is that a
Yeah.
discussion?
I would put a motion. If there's any discussion, we'll talk about it.
Okay. I move to vote to close and sign the 2022 annual town election warrant as shown in the packet.
Second.
Moved.
Sorry,
Get
not
rid of that
not the one in
last
the
part.
packet.
Not the one in the
The
packet.
one that was just updated that we got from council. So board members have it, and we'll add it to the packet.
So as
Okay,
presented is.
as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion from the board? Joe?
Just to put out there that, again, this is for the annual town election on Tuesday, May 17th. Polls will be open 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. at the Community Center Gymnasium. On the ballot will be 2 seats for the Board of Selectmen, each for a 3-year term, town clerk for a 3-year term, 1 member of the Monomoy Regional School Committee for a 3-year term, 2 trustees of the Brooks Free Library, each for 3-year terms, 1 water wastewater commissioner for a 3-year term, and 1 member of the Housing Authority to fill an unexpired 2-year term. And then based on the board's action, you'll have 3 ballot questions. The first is the standard road maintenance program ballot question. The second is the charter amendments that we've talked about the capital outlay plan as far as going from 7 to 5 years and having capital items be greater than 50,000. And then the non-binding question you just placed a moment ago.
Thank you, Joe. Anyone in the public? Roll call vote. Don?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Larry?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. C, discussion and possible vote on an interim finance director. With the sad news that our finance director is leaving us, we have to take up getting an interim finance director. Joe?
So I would just say that the sad news is tempered somewhat slightly by, we now have another friend at Barnstable County, given that Carol Capola is going to take her immense talents from Harwich and apply that same grit and attitude and ability as the Barnstable County Finance Director. I've already had her pledge that we can call her a friend in the county, and she agreed to that. So what we're dealing with now, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, is a vacancy that will be active as of Monday, May 9th, so the week after town meeting. And so I'd be looking for direction from the board. We will obviously post the job. The official title is Finance Director / Town Accountant. And we can begin that immediately if the board wants, and I would certainly recommend that. But in the meantime, we would expect that we may not be able to get anyone to start right after town meeting because many of the folks that would be considered are probably dealing with town meetings in their current towns. And so we should consider having me reach out to any number of folks that may be available and qualified to serve in the interim.
Comments from the board, Larry?
No, please do so. It's a critical position, obviously, so we can't afford a gap.
Julie?
Yeah, no, I agree with Larry.
Mary?
Yes, post haste.
Don?
Sadly, I was thinking in a completely different direction. I was hoping that we could find somebody soon enough to overlap with Carol so that we're not going to wind up with a service interruption.
We can certainly try. We'll post immediately.
Comments from the public? Whoever caller number 2 online, could we mute your mic, please? All right, Joe, I think you have a consensus on that one.
Yep.
Thank you. D?
I move that we vote to approve the following seasonal on-premise wines and malt license renewals. All renewals contingent upon the Selectmen Office receiving licensee's 2022 fire inspection report within 30 days of opening. AIG Corp., DBA The Weather Deck Restaurant, 168 Route 28.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
None.
Anyone in the public? Roll call. Don?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Larry?
Aye.
And I am an aye.
I move that we vote to approve the following seasonal on-premise all alcohol liquor license renewals. All renewals contingent upon the Selectmen's Office receiving licensee's 2022 fire inspection report within 30 days of opening. First, 554 Street Bar, LLC, DBA Three Monkeys, 554 Route 28, Unit B. Second, the Belmont Condominium Beach Club Corporation, DBA The Beach, 1 Belmont Road. 3, the Lucky Labrador, Inc., DBA Perks, 545 Route 28. 4, MT Group LLC, DBA Mad Minnow Kitchen and Bar, 554 Route 28. 30 Earl Road LLC, DBA The Commodore Inn, 30 Earl Road, pending receipt of certificate of insurance showing liquor liability. 6 Pleasant Bay Group, Inc., DBA Wequasit Inn, 173 Route 28. 7 Ember Pizza, Inc., DBA Ember, 600 Route 28. And 8 Port Restaurant and Bar, Inc., 541 Route 28.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Mary?
Didn't we talk about, these are the seasonal licenses, that we would have the licenses contingent on them attending the chief's liquor regulations meeting?
I think that was a change in the liquor regulation, so that would be contingent for next year, this year, because we were already in the
Oh,
process.
okay.
But Joe,
No, that's correct.
that's correct. Don?
And that any previous restrictions on the licenses are continued out over with these renewals.
So part of your motion, Mary, include
Yes.
any previous conditions?
Any previous conditions?
And that's part of the second?
Yeah.
Okay,
I also
go ahead.
want to bring up, because it's coming up, I would like to be flagged when the former Irish pub comes up. It is never opened. Doesn't look like it's even close to being open. So they've had a license that was not being exercised for the entire cycle of the period of time.
Anyone in the public? Roll call vote. Don?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Larry?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. F?
I move that we vote to approve a road race event for the National MS Society to be held on June 26, 2022.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call. Larry?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
And I'm an aye.
I move that we vote to authorize the chair to sign the Massachusetts Department of Public Health / Public Health Excellence Grant.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call. Larry?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
And I'm an aye.
I move that we vote to approve a 2022 annual common viculars license renewal, Stop and Shop Supermarket, DBA Starbucks at Stop and Shop, Route 39 and Route 137.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Done.
Roll call. Larry?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Skipping I and going to J.
I move that we vote on the proposed 2022 annual town meeting warrant
Okay,
articles.
I think we're gonna discuss these, so I
Yeah.
don't think we're ready for a motion
Okay.
yet. Thank you, though.
This is for the chair to sign.
All right, Conservation Commission, first on the docket tonight. We have 2 water-dependent structures bylaw and wetland protection bylaw. Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening again.
Good evening. Before we start, I know you have a presentation. I would ask the board members first if they want to see the entire presentation again. or just be able to go to the slides if you have any questions. Don?
I'm okay with the questions.
Mary?
Yeah, we've read through everything you've provided and listened intently, so I don't think we need to do that again.
Julie?
Agreed.
Larry?
Yeah, I would simply ask a statement of any changes that were made since our last discussion.
And then, so not yet. Anyone in the public wish to see the presentation of the slideshow before we get started in the conversation? Hearing no one? To Larry's question, any changes? And I'd like to start with the second one, if we could. The Wetlands Protection Bylaw. That seems to be a lot less controversial than the top one. So let's get the easier one out of the way.
It is, good. Yes, the changes to the wetland, for the record, I'm Ernie Crafty, the chair of the Conservation Commission. With me is Brad Chase, the former chair. Our purpose here tonight is to request support of the board for the two warrant articles. So with that, I'll give you a quick overview of the changes to the Wetland Protection Bylaw. We've covered those once before, and they're relatively minor. They've added 7 new definitions to the bylaws, including definition of a buffer zone, which is the 100-yard area between outward from the wetland resource area, cumulative impacts, mitigation, and mitigation constrained sites. The second part of that, mitigation constrained sites, are we've explained they're sort of virgin building lots that we often get requests for alterations in, and part of the tie-in with that is the in lieu fees, which we've had approved previously. So rather than doing mitigation on the site itself, we can charge in lieu fees and use them for other purposes, which we can get into later as well. We've also added a definition for a 60-foot no new structure zone, which is outward from the 50-foot no disturb zone. So that gives us a 10-foot buffer that people can use between any structures they put on a lot and the no disturb zone for foot traffic and that sort of thing. We've defined shellfish, and we've added the definition of a variance to the bylaws. Any questions on those?
Larry?
Maybe for everyone watching and listening, could you explain a little more the difference between no construction and no disturb? What that means in practice?
Yeah, our rules provide that the zone that's 50 foot outside of a wetland resource area cannot have any structures at all in it. You can't put fences up, you can't, you can put footpaths through it, obviously, to access the wetland, or the pond or lake or whatever it might be. But other than that, we don't allow any structures in that area. So the 60-foot zone is the buffer between the area where you can put a structure. So you can put a structure within 60 feet of the wetland resource area, but that gives you a 10-foot path, or egress areas, if you will, between the structure and the no disturb zone. So for example, if people want to put up a house and they want to have a footpath going around the backyard, rather than putting that footpath through the 50-foot zone, they have now an additional 10 feet that they can use for that kind of purpose. It keeps the people out of the 50 feet is what we're looking for.
And why can't you do that now with the existing regulations? I mean, you have no disturb for 50 feet.
Well, right now, we've had a lot of requests to put structures right up against the 50-foot zone. And what that does is it pushes activities from that structure into the 50 feet, and we're trying to avoid that.
Okay.
A lot of examples over the years of having buildings go right to the 50, and then there's encroachment that goes into the no disturb zone, and then you have lawns. It's not authorized, it's not supposed to happen, but it's been a common practice.
Okay, thank you.
Julie, any questions so far?
Yeah, so I just want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly, because the way I read it is that if there's a new build, so you've got a demo rebuild, and you want to build up to the 50, you're saying no longer, it'll really be a 0 to 60
That's right.
setback, right?
Right. Yes.
So to your point of normally it's going to roughly to 50 with the limit of work right along that edge, you're finding that that's been an issue.
Right.
So is there any discussion in terms of thinking, you know, you just make sure that that limit of work is at, you know, say 52 feet versus pushing it all the way back another 10 feet?
We've had a lot of requests for that, but, I mean, this establishes some guidelines for people to follow. I mean, it makes it a whole lot easier for builders and anybody else that's coming before us.
Okay, thanks, that
Because,
answers my
I mean,
question.
otherwise, we're looking at variances and mitigation and all that sort of thing. It's just, it makes it a whole lot simpler for everyone, I think, to have the definitional 60
ahead.
feet.
Just to quickly follow, our regs do have a vegetative buffer strip that's allowed to put just inside of the 50, or actually outside of the 50. And so we could put in a 5-foot, couple rows of plantings, and to try to reduce that encroachment. But we felt that that was working in some cases, other cases it wasn't working. So we wanted to have more of a firm buffer to that type of encroachment.
Okay, thank you.
Mary?
I'm all set, thanks.
Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just as a practical measure, because this is something I've asked in the past, what have you applied to people who are coming in up till this point recently is the criteria?
We've got 60 feet in our regulations.
And those are made internally?
Yes, yeah.
Please don't do that
And-
again.
and
I
they
mean,
haven't-
If we're
I
asking
mean-
town meeting for permission for something, you should be waiting for town meeting's permission. That's all I want to say.
Okay.
I have nothing.
Good.
Anything further?
The second items in the changes to the bylaws, we've proposed a decrease in the size of a regulated wetland from 3,000 square feet to 1,000. And I think I explained this previously, that a lot of the 1,000 square foot areas are vernal pools, which are a valuable resource in town. And with all of the new developments and everything that are going on, we're trying to protect as much as we can of the wetlands that we have. And then we've added provision authorizing the commission to require applicants to pay a fee for specific engineering and consulting services. So oftentimes when we have an application come in, actually, most recently, one of the docks that we had come in, the riverfront area where they were proposing to put the dock was eroding. And we've had 2 of them in the last couple of months with the same kind of situation. And so we wanted to bring in a consultant to look at that. Now, fortunately, we found a consultant that didn't charge anything as part of the county. But in some situations, we might have to get a paid consultant to come in, and we would have to ask the applicants to pay the fee for those consultants. And of course, if there's an excess, if they pay $100 and the consultant costs $50, then we would refund the difference to them.
Any questions, Larry?
None.
Julie?
So, yeah, I do have a question on that. So if you need a consultant, and so are you informing somebody of that when they're filing a notice of intent, or is that coming up at a hearing? 'Cause
It generally comes up in the meetings.
Yeah, so I can imagine that that's a time delay in terms of how many more hearings you would have to have and how long does it take
It
you to
can be,
find that?
yeah.
And is there a limit to how much a consultant would be, you know, the cost in terms of how would an applicant know that ahead of time?
We've not, I mean, we don't have any way to define that, really. I mean, I can't set a limit on it.
Yeah. So normally you're going to the county looking for something like that if you can get it for little to nothing, and if not, you'd need to bring in a specialist.
Amy's got great resources, so,
Oh, yeah,
you
no,
know,
she's
we rely on
fantastic.
her for a lot of this stuff.
Okay. Thank you, that's my only question.
Mary?
No, I'm all set.
Don?
I'm pretty sure these folks aren't here for the budget discussion, so I defer to what's going to be occurring.
Anyone in the public wish to speak on this one? This is the wetland bylaw.
Mr. Chair, I wish to speak.
Go ahead, identify yourself for the record.
Hi, this is Mark Sangiolo, 9 Sketchaconnet Way in West Harwich. I think when they talk about changing the buffer from 50 to 60, they're saying they're finding this, they're finding that. Have they shown any evidence of their findings? And then the second item, where they say they want the residents to pay for the consultant, I just don't understand what's going on here, because Uh, I've gone back and listened to several of the Board of Conservation Commission meetings, and they really beat up on the consultants that we hire. They're very rude. They don't trust them. And it's really, it's not an easy thing to watch. So now they want to change the dynamic here, and we're going to pay for their selection. I don't think this is a good idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Care to comment on that?
Not really.
Okay. Anyone else wish to speak on that?
This is Catherine Ricks from Coastal Engineering Company. I have a presentation, if I'm allowed to present right now, to go along with the changes to the bylaw.
Go ahead.
Okay, so can I present?
Go ahead, yeah.
Are we going through the moratorium now, or should I present now, or should I wait?
This is on the wetlands bylaw changes. This is not the moratorium. So if this presentation is related to that, I would hold off.
Okay, I'll hold off then.
Okay. Anyone else specific to the wetland bylaw? In my review of the legal notes on this, I don't see that there was a significant enough change to the board what the original presentation was. Therefore, I don't think we have to change unless somebody wants to, whether or not it's gonna be on the warrant. And I would turn to the board and ask if they disagree.
No,
Mary?
fine.
Julie? Mary?
No.
Don?
I don't care as long as it gets to a town meeting.
Yep. All right, so tonight, it's already been voted that this will be on the town meeting warrant. That was voted a while ago. Joe?
No, just the next question would be whether the board accepts and adopts.
Yep. So can I get a motion to accept and adopt?
I move that we accept and adopt Conservation Commission's Harwich Water Dependent Structures Bylaw, Chapter, what am I moving, Joe?
Harwich Wetlands Protection Bylaw, Chapter 310.
That's the first one.
I move that we
So you're,
adopt,
yeah, number 2.
that we adopt,
Accept and adopt.
accept and adopt the Harwich Wetlands Protection Bylaw, Chapter 310.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
So
No.
just,
Go ahead.
sorry, clarify that we're just adding it to the warrant,
We've already added it to the
It's a
warrant?
position.
but we're not endorsing it.
This is
the
what we're
endorsement.
voting.
So, are we, all right, so
So you're
should
either
we
gonna,
say we're endorsing it?
no, so
All right.
you're gonna vote to support it, or you're gonna vote no?
All right.
Yes or no?
No.
So Julie's a no. That was a roll call vote. Larry?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Don?
Abstain.
I'm an aye. All right, so that one, Joe, if you caught that. And you
Checking
look,
with
and
the
you look into the
stenographer.
back of the room,
Thank you.
who's not here, not on
You
camera.
got that.
Next is the Harwich Water Dependent Structures Bylaw, Chapter 304 of the Code of the Town of Harwich. We took this up in fairly good length. You left here, you went back and had a meeting, and I believe the meeting resulted in bringing it forward the way it was. Your vote.
Right.
And what was the vote on that?
Let's see. We need Amy for this recollection. I believe that there was one nay.
I don't recall. I thought it was
Mark's-
unanimous.
I'm not sure.
I'll just
I
throw it out there.
apologize. Yeah,
I got
I'm
one
sorry.
nay is how it was
I
presented.
think there was one
Yeah.
nay.
Um,
There was a lot of discussion on changing the time period at which the moratorium would go to, and the idea was to conduct a study to find out what's happening with docks and piers in Herring River. And the discussion pretty much fell back that 5 years was a good target, 3 years was probably not enough, and so we settled on keeping it the way it was.
And that was discussion, that was your target. You thought 5 years was
Yes,
what it was.
right.
So this one, unlike the last one, we obviously got a legal opinion on this, based on some of the letters that were sent. I know you guys acknowledge that because you discussed it.
Yeah.
Though she says it's defendable, she being Amy Questle, KP
Right.
Law, who wrote the letter for this board, it's challengeable. And I think that in itself, I'm gonna ask the board for a motion to reconsider putting it on the warrant first, and then we're gonna have a conversation, and then we would put it forward again. Because when you first presented it, we weren't presented with bringing something to town meeting that could come with strings attached to it by way of a lawsuit or by way of a legal action against it.
When you voted before, it was a moratorium with no ending.
Right.
And-
Well, either way, based on what KP Law has instructed this board, we're gonna go forward to town meeting with something that could be challenged legally. And I think that it's important for the residents to know that. And there's a lot of information on here that most people don't and can't understand unless they sit and read and read and read. We have to. And then we got the legal opinion, which will ultimately end up in the packet as soon as the town administrator releases that for the packet. But it's a game changer for me, and I'll tell you that you've got a lot of great things in this bylaw that I think are gonna be ruined myself based on having a moratorium without any real basis behind it. I don't think that you've found specifics that you can say. And I think that was the point of our attorney, was that you should study it first and then come back with a moratorium if you think we need it. And then I would also just say, as a board member, I don't see the point in bringing something like this controversial to town meeting when we're only talking about 3 more docks.
Well,
Go ahead.
couple of comments.
Sure.
Since Amy gave us her comments, we made some changes. We discussed changes to the proposal at the last week's Conservation Commission meeting. One of the important ones from my perspective is initially we were focused on docks and piers in the river for this study that we were going to do. And based on the comments that we got from a lot of the attendees, legal and consultants and some of the dock owners as well, and people that were kayaking on the river, our thought is that we will expand the study. So it won't be focused solely on docks and piers. As I mentioned at the last meeting too, there have been studies of the Herring River water quality, and it's been deemed unacceptable with immediate restoration required by the commission, by the Cape Cod Commission. So our survey, the study that we plan to do, would also look at salt marsh conditions, stresses and the impacts that are taking place to the salt marsh in the river, shellfish quality, the diversity of the shellfish in the river, the habitat and impacts on shellfish that are taking place from docks and other sources. Water quality, toxins and contributors. Someone mentioned there's severe shoaling north of the Route 28 bridge, to the point where it's difficult to get up there now. So, what's causing that? What's the long-term impact of that shoaling going to be on the river? Mapping sediment source banks, I mentioned before the erosion that's taking place. There are certain banks that if they feed a downstream coastal bank with sediment, you can't touch them. We don't know what those are, and that's...
Jim, I don't want to get too far off topic,
Yeah.
because I think the study's a great idea, and I certainly support that river. I've grown up on that river, I get it. The moratorium is what's at question here.
Absolutely.
The
it is.
moratorium on docks specifically is what's at question. The moratorium on docks is what our legal team wrote to us about. And for 3 docks and that moratorium, when all the other applicants have already filed, are you sure that this is the way you want to go with this? And that's the question for this board tonight. So
Right.
I'm only telling you my opinion, they haven't spoken yet. So they could all completely disagree with me. But based on the legal opinion that we got, I can't support it.
Yeah, what I was just trying to point out, though, was that Attorney Quessel's opinion was based on strictly a survey on docks and piers. And based on the legal feedback that we've gotten from attorneys that were attending our meetings, they said you have to have something more than that, which we've added. So I think that could color Attorney Quessel's opinion on the
So
litigation.
would the study come before the moratorium or after the moratorium?
After, during the 5-year period.
So you see, that's where I'm going with it. It's we're putting a moratorium out right now without the basis for a moratorium. And you're asking for 5 years. And I don't see the basis. So let's stop talking about my opinion. Let's get it to the board. And because of that change with the legal part of this, I would first ask if somebody's willing to make a positive motion.
What about the presentation online?
We will get to that if we need to get to that.
Okay.
But a positive motion to reconsider the motion that put this article on the town meeting warrant. Anyone willing to make
As a
that?
point of order, I'm not sure I even voted in the affirmative. It has to be somebody who voted in the affirmative in the first place to make this motion.
Well, we definitely voted at least 4-0. I thought it was 5-0. So Don's saying he's not sure. So is anyone willing to make a motion to reconsider having this on the warrant until after we have this discussion? But it's changed, and that's my point is what we voted to put on there didn't have the supporting documentation that we have now.
The question, you mean the legal opinion?
That's right.
Okay.
Right, we didn't have
We
that
did
at the
not have
time,
that.
right.
So what,
So the proper format here is a motion to reconsider that article, including that article in the warrant. It'll be moved and seconded, and then we'll open up to board comments, and then in the end, we'll either vote to put it on the warrant
yeah.
or not put it on the warrant.
okay, I'm happy to do that. Help me if I stumble.
Yep. Motion to
A
reconsider.
motion to reconsider the article for the Harwich Wetlands Protection
Nope,
Bylaw.
water
No?
dependent structure.
Oh, sorry, I went wrong. Harwich Water Dependent Structures Bylaw, Chapter 304,
The previous vote on.
the previous vote.
Second.
Motion to reconsider the previous vote,
To put it on the
To
warrant.
place in the warrant.
to place it on the warrant.
Yeah.
I second that.
Okay.
So now it's off the warrant? Is
Nope,
that
now
correct?
we're
Have
gonna
to
vote,
vote.
and then we will bring it up again, and then we can vote to put it back on the warrant, if depending on how everybody lands. So, but we have to get it off the warrant the way it was presented before, and then have a conversation based on the legal opinion that we got and any new information. In the end, we may support it, and then there would be a positive motion to put it back on the warrant. So I'm gonna take a roll call vote. Larry?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Don? And I'm an aye. 5-0 to take it off the warrant. Now, with everything that I said, it's the rest of the board's turn, and I'm gonna start with the board before we get into any presentations. Don?
I'd rather hear the presentation, so I'm deferring.
Okay. Board wanna hear the presentation from Coastal first?
No,
Go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm happy to speak. I've read it all, I've heard your presentations, and I just, even prior to the legal review, which only adds to my feeling, I cannot deny what was 8 families a dock on the river when we're not sure that that's the problem. And there is a process for them to apply for it and either to be granted or denied. Now, I understand 5 of them are already in the works, so they're sort of grandfathered. So now we're down to 3 people. I can't do that. And now we've got a lawyer telling us, our lawyer telling us that we're setting ourselves up for a potential lawsuit. I just can't accept that expense. So I'm a no. If the only way to get rid of the moratorium is to say no to this article, I'm a no.
Julie?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would echo Mary's comments in the sense that we have the information from our attorney. We certainly don't need to spend more money on legal fees, understanding that we're only really talking about 3 more docks. And ultimately, I would feel more comfortable if we had a study first to determine whether or not we needed a moratorium, or at least more criteria for the study.
Larry?
You've confused me. You've made me rethink this tonight with your presentation. Because generally speaking, I thought the moratorium had some merit, only because logically speaking, if you do the study after the moratorium, then why bother doing the study? Because the docks will already be in place. And so you've kind of, time-wise, moved beyond the reasons for the study. But now you've expanded it to more, looking at a lot of other issues. And then that says to me, well, if you're looking at the whole realm of things, then maybe maybe moratorium is the wrong action at this point, while you try to figure out all the various methods of scouring and so on. So you've kind of made me change my mind. I hate to do that, but you kind of made me change my mind on that. Now, let me ask you, this warrant article, however, has a lot of things other than moratorium in it. So I assume even if we dislike the moratorium, we still have to fashion a motion and look at other items that you're talking about. But But see, you see my dilemma? If you look at everything, then this, you know, I objected to the 5 years. I thought that was over long. I said that last time. But just the time-wise made some sense to me. But now if you're having to extend the study, and that does get to our legal counsel's view that you needed more data showing that the docks were causing harm. And so that was, you know, that's the dilemma we get. How do you get that data before they're all done?
Brad or Ernie, you want to respond to the board members?
Yeah, I'm disappointed.
Well, let me address Larry's concern, that the proposal that we've put forth here is not limited to the moratorium, the changes that we're proposing here, of course.
Right.
There's a lot of things in here that have to do with structural changes to docks and piers that have been proven to protect the salt marsh better, for example, than our old laws would, or the old requirements that we had would allow. So tossing out the entire proposal is going to do a disservice for us. If we're going to be required to let docks go in there with half-inch spacing on the decking rather than 3/4 inch, and it's proven that additional 1/4 inch spacing lets additional light through and is protective. So I don't want to lose those strictly because of the moratorium.
Right, good. Thank you.
I think that's the point. We don't want to lose it either. And I think every conversation that was had at our last meeting, every email that we've received, and even feedback in your meetings was based on the moratorium. And you know, I've heard instances where residents have come back and asked for an extension on their permits, and you guys debate whether it's a 3-year extension, 2-year extension, or a 1-year extension. So I think that there's some room, and I think that in our mind, and at least I called Amy Questle and asked her. You know, you could propose a lower moratorium, but I don't see the basis for a moratorium. And to your point, there's a lot of great things in this article. The moratorium's not one of them right now without the basis for it. And Brad, you started to talk, so let me let you talk, and then I'll go to Selectman Anderson.
Yeah, just briefly, I guess, I just feel like we've been to this point before in the past. There was a big debate over docks and piers in Pleasant Bay. Beginning in 2003, 2009, bylaw changes were made to ban new docks in Round Cove and then increase the setbacks in Pleasant Bay to 250 feet. And it was all about impacts that our bylaws and regulations in the Wetlands Protection Act was supposed to prevent. These regulations are pretty clear. No impacts can occur to salt marsh. In fact, no change in the productivity of salt marsh can occur. And then no new structures should be allowed where you have shellfish habitat. So to me, our regulations aren't really stopping the intent that has been around for a long time with the Conservation Commission and with the voters who voted for those changes in 2009. So to me, I know there's a lot of concerns about whether there truly are impacts in the Herring River. To me, they're obvious. I can just go to every dock and see what's happening. What is the actual cause of those impacts? It's hard to say, but the impacts are present in the footprint of the dock, and you don't see them in the same level as you leave the dock footprint. So to me, it's obvious. There's a real disconnect between what we're hearing from the consulting community on this topic and I think what some of us are seeing in the field. So we did feel the moratorium was a chance to pump the brakes, do a really good study, and then to see what's actually happening. And so I'm concerned. I think the numbers of docks that could come in, they may or may not have a large cumulative impact, but I think part of this concern is both individual impacts from docks and cumulative impacts, and along with the boats that go along with them. So it was a similar interest to Pleasant Bay. Let's try to find a way to reduce these impacts in Pleasant Bay. That happened, the voters agreed, it eliminated that concern.
Yeah, I think private property rights play in here, for me at least. And again, you're talking about 3 docks, so it's gonna be a stretch to convince me that it's okay to put a moratorium on for 3 docks and go to town meeting with the risk of having our attorneys have to fight something.
Yeah.
If 5 have put in already, those are the 5 that wanted docks. The other 3, you might have a year or 2 or 3 or 4 to get your study done and present a moratorium.
Yeah.
But without a study,
Are we
I
sure
don't
it's
see the
3?
point.
Yeah, I mean, I hear the number 3 a lot.
I'm not sure it's
and-
3.
Well, 3 was mentioned in the last meeting several times.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, it's hard to really determine how many properties on the river can have a dock.
Well, I don't see an immediate need personally for a moratorium, so I would have to vote no on this, and I would hate to vote no on your whole article, but I'm gonna leave it up to the board and see where the board goes. Don, do you want the presentation?
Yeah.
Okay. There was someone online that was gonna, I think from Coastal, that was gonna have a presentation?
Yes, this is Todd Turgoff from Coastal, and Catherine will be presenting.
Okay. Is this a fairly brief, we have a long agenda tonight.
I can go through it pretty briefly. I can kind of flip through the sides and concentrate on the topics that have kind of come up already.
Thank you very much.
Seen it, right?
I don't think.
Let me see if I can share.
Before you get started, real quick.
Yep.
Mary, you had a comment and I didn't go back to you.
Oh, my only comment was gonna be, of all the people that wrote to us and sent pictures and documentation and scientists, to your point of there's an awful lot of good in this proposed article, they all agreed with that. I think each and every one of them said they were in favor of everything else except the moratorium. So I just wanted to highlight that.
Thank you, Mary. Go ahead.
Okay. And as was said, we are in agreement with everything else in the, all the other proposed changes, and docs that we have put forward in recent applications have gone along with some of those proposed changes for the docs, like the ratio of 1.5 to 1 over the salt marsh and the change in the 1/2-inch spacing for the deck boards. So those are just a couple of the ones that we are in agreement with in the change. Just we are against the moratorium as we don't see it's necessary. So my slides go through the salt marsh shoreline from 1938 to 2018, the scour around the dock piles as was seen out there, the salt marsh growth around the piles, oyster habitat around the dock piles, the crab dieback of salt marsh, and then just it's overall the lack of scientific justification for the moratorium. So we have images here on the left is at 1938, on the right is 2018. You can see there is minimal change in the actual shoreline of the salt marsh there. So these just over time with the increase in docks on there, there hasn't been a large change to the shoreline of the marsh along the river. And here's again, a little bit of a lower section to it from 1938 to 1971 to 2018. And then when we were discussing the number of docks that could be permitted under the current regulations, it is that there's 8 docks that could be permitted through 11 properties, 3 of which would be shared docks, but there have been applications since. So it is possibly now only 3 that have not been done. And the green properties on here are the ones that do have docks. So the definition of scours, that scours the removal by hydrodynamic means of granulated bed material in the vicinity of a coastal structure. So the scour is more of a specific form of erosion, but pile scour is the direct scour right around the pile caused from the pile. Nothing, you know, it's rule of thumb, it's about this 1 to 2 times the pile diameter. So if you have a 12-inch pile, it could extend 2 feet out, but that would be in a much deeper location than some of these dock piles that we have. And what was seen out there when I went on the boat trip with conservation members and harbor master members, there's very minimal scour in some locations. The square piles, they do have a little more scour. You can see on this slide, I tried to point out where there's some minimal scour. It's about 1 inch, 2 inches down, you know, maybe 8 inches from the pile location. So these are some areas we did see the scour. Here you can see with the round piles, a lot less. It's hard to see through the water here, but a lot less of the scour in those locations. And then here we move on to the salt marsh growth around piles. So in some locations where we're proposing docks, it is the location on the property that currently has minimal salt marsh there. And that's just in order to follow along with the regulations, pick the least amount of salt marsh, the least thickness of the salt marsh, and the area where there isn't much, so there won't be any impacts during construction or the least amount of impacts. You can see here that the salt marsh is right up to some of the piles in some locations, so we're not seeing a lot of impacts directly from the piles. You will notice in some of the pictures that are presented from other people that there is a dye there is some lack of salt marsh under some of the docks, and a lot of that we believe is caused from the old regulations where some of the docks were lower to the salt marsh, so they weren't getting the sun as often. And these pictures, since they were from January, we do want to point out that this is the dormant season for salt marsh and not the spring and the fall where it's a lot, in the summer where it's a lot more the green, lush salt marsh that you see. And this is a picture of a dock that was abandoned back in 2014. And you can see the salt marsh, just with all the piles still there, has definitely grown. It's definitely in around the piles, and there's not an effect from scour around those piles. And then we come to the crab dieback, because I know that was a concern at one point. Like some of the other reasons the salt marsh is dying out there is that the crabs, which are known as the purple marsh crabs, they're a local species, and they are not being, there's not as many predators of them, so they're out there, and in order for them to find food for vegetation, they eat the salt marsh. And the lower right, you can see that this is how they graze. They cut the tops of the salt marsh to eat them, and then that salt marsh ends up dying, and then you end up with this salt marsh dieback. There's multiple studies we included with our submittal. Multiple studies have been done that on the Cape and in Connecticut and other Northeast areas, crabs are actually causing a lot of the salt marsh dieback. And then the oyster habitat. So we did see a lot of oyster habitat out there on the piles, the bracing. There was some on the rock revetments, some on the bulkheads. So we just want to point out you can't see all this shellfish habitat at the surface, but oysters are the ones where you can see it at the surface, and they are attaching to the piles. And you can see here with all the oysters attached to the pile, you can't see any erosion around it. The erosion's not happening. The oysters are right there. And that's just a quick view of the presentation. And I don't know if there was any questions or if you just want me to go back to certain slides.
Thank you very much. Don?
You're
Start
welcome.
with you. You're good? Mary?
All set.
Julie?
Yeah, no questions.
Larry?
I'm okay.
Want to comment? Any comment?
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, you have voted to not put it on the warrant?
We have not yet.
Oh,
We pulled it off from our last vote because
Right.
it was inconsistent from that vote.
right.
The board will take this up and we'll either vote
Yeah.
to put it on the warrant, and if I'm reading the board correctly, minus the moratorium,
Mhm.
which you'll obviously have to go back and get approval from your board to go forward with that, but we could vote it subject to. Joe? Correct?
Yes, I'm waiting my turn.
Go ahead, your turn.
I'm hoping to make a fine point of it. But the action the board took tonight was to remove, as the chairman just said, your article for the reconsideration purposes of the moratorium. You have the language in there from council, and I haven't heard if you've said, if you agree with the cure that council's identified relative to pushing the moratorium forward for 5 years. Have you identified that process that Attorney Questle said that the town would need to do? So you're aware of her comments in the draft, correct?
I'm not certain what you're mentioning here.
Yeah, I don't think we've seen those comments.
Yeah.
Okay.
We've seen their changes that she submitted to the bylaw
She-
itself.
Her comments to us expressed that she felt it was really important to put a timeline on the moratorium, to not have it open-ended. And we accepted those comments and put a 5-year period on it.
Go ahead, Joe.
So, that's not how I read the attorney's comments. And I'm not an attorney and I'm not a conservation commissioner, but what she's written here is that in her opinion, the commission will need to show, and it's a 3-step cure. First, that there is an existing problem of concern. You're identifying the steps to cure the problem and concern, and that it is reasonable that the steps require 5 years. Because I think what the town has heard from council is the 5 years is a problem. So if you're aware of that, it doesn't sound like you've been motivated by council's cure.
We did discuss that, the timeline, and we talked about if it was possible to put a contract out to bid and to get a study going and to execute it in less than 3 years. We felt it wasn't. And there was discussion whether we should scale back to 4 years, and the commission settled on keeping it 5.
So if I may continue,
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman. So then I think what you're presented with tonight with this board, as you've heard, is, I'll use an investment banking term, the moratorium is your poison pill. In other words, my sense is, if you expect to continue to go forward on the moratorium as crafted, it's very unlikely that the board's gonna put it back on the warrant. If the board were to put it back on the warrant, I would then turn to the court of public opinion and say it's probably less likely that town meeting would allow that to leave town meeting with that language in there, because it can be amended on the floor. And then for me, last but not least, is then, if this bylaw is adopted, it does have the moratorium language that was not cured in the way that council's recommending. I have concerns that the Attorney General would not approve as presented, or at the very least, would put in the approval document that they take no opinion on the moratorium, and in that public announcement, essentially say that we're ripe for a challenge, and then we'll be challenged. And so for me, to try to put the fine point on it tonight, you have a poison pill in front of you. Does the proposal on Chapter 304 go forward without the moratorium? Because if not, my sense from the board is it's not going to go forward. And if it does, my sense from the town is it's not going to survive town meeting. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And if you want to respond to that, you can. Otherwise, I would just say I could take a straw poll with the board right now to see if it's going to pass and go on the warrant,
Yeah,
based on the comments I'm thinking we lost.
yeah, no, I get that, and it makes sense. I am disappointed. I feel like we've spent a lot of time in this, and I think that the presentations that we've put together that are showing impacts haven't really sunk in. And again, I feel there's a really remarkable disconnect between what we're hearing from the consulting community and what we're seeing in the field when we put boots on and go out to the Herring River. So I am disappointed, but I understand where you folks are. I think your legal advice is important, and I think the town does not want to spend funds on legal action, so I understand that very much.
Well, Brad, I would say that it's not lost on me. If your study shows that something needs to be done, then we do it.
Yeah.
And if it's a year from now, and you manage to get some of the study done, and you can articulate that there's actually a problem, step one from the attorney, then you put together an article for next year that adds a moratorium to what you just did. But to everybody's point so far, why kill the whole change on the moratorium? And I'm gonna follow the advice of legal.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm gonna
I
follow.
guess I do have a question on procedure. So leading up to the moratorium, we discussed at length different measures on how to reduce impacts from docks. And one of the things we discussed was a setback between neighboring docks, which is presently 65 feet in town, except for 250 feet in Pleasant Bay. And we had a lot of discussion on increasing that setback to reduce cumulative impacts, which is what the moratorium would do. And so is there a way to revisit that particular criteria that we did not change, to keep all the other changes we put in, and then add a setback increase?
I won't speak for the whole board. In my mind, no, because there's not enough time to have public hearings and to get people involved to come forward with something honest and transparent.
Yeah.
If we have a fall town meeting, certainly you could do it fall. If not, next
Right.
year's annual.
Right.
Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm with the chair, because this is not mutually exclusive. If I don't get the moratorium, I can't do the study, and I can't get the bylaw. Take the bylaw, take the time, do the study, and then you'll have quantitative data that will show why it is you need to do what it is you want to do. You shouldn't be doing it first and then try to backfill it with data after you've already approved of a moratorium, which essentially is denying the docks.
Right. Well, I hope everyone realizes that we really considered the moratorium carefully over many public meetings. And so the concern was really vetted. Not a lot of folks showed up to these meetings because we had a pandemic, but it really wasn't taken lightly. There's a lot of concern about the present regulations and how we're allowing new structures with variances, and one after another are getting through on variances. And so we felt like we needed to do something for this really vulnerable, important resource area in the town of Harwich, which is really the Herring River between the bridges, where you've got really high tidal erosional forces.
Brad, I have no doubt that you went through the exercise. That legal opinion was requested by me after I read a legal opinion from an opposing attorney.
Yeah.
And that legal opinion should have been requested either by your commission or the conservation agent, long before we got to this point.
Right.
But we got to this point, and I don't see how we go forward if we add the moratorium.
And I'm not arguing the effort either. As a matter of fact, it's commendable. I know what you're trying to do. It's just that it's government that you're trying to match it up with. I would take the incremental improvements in the bylaw, take our instruction that we would love you to do the study, and come back with the findings of the study that would result in what it is you want to do further. I mean, I wouldn't abandon ship on any other incremental changes that you've made, because then it's all or nothing.
Yeah.
So, as I've said earlier, we have a long meeting, so I'm gonna put this to a vote and ask that the motion include removing the language on a moratorium. And then if we get a motion and a second, then I'll go to discussion. If there's any more discussion, then we can have it at that point. But I think we've talked about it long enough.
Yeah.
Mary, make a motion to approve, and then at the end of it, with the exclusion of the moratorium language.
Okay, I move that we vote to approve the Harwich Water Dependent Structures Bylaw, Chapter 304, with the moratorium removed.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded, exactly as I said it would be. And you guys will have to go back to your commission, and vote that. And if it's not voted in your next meeting, we can remove it in its entirety if your commission decides to.
Okay.
Is that acceptable?
Yeah,
Yes.
and there's no opportunity to add the setbacks, so I get that
Would
message
wait,
as well,
yeah,
and that's fine. Save that for a later date.
Yeah. Now, before, I will go to the public, but I would say, I
Chairman?
think you've all heard, go ahead.
I apologize, it's a procedural question.
Go ahead.
I think the net effect of the motion that was seconded, and I just want commissioners to validate that, is within the proposed text you have within section 304-4 restricted areas. Is it your understanding that this motion would eliminate all of item B in that 304-4B? Because that speaks directly to the moratorium. So that's the first question. And then the second question is, are you aware of any other language within there that may tie back to the concept of a moratorium?
To answer your question, B, yes. B
And-
would be eliminated. A would stay. A is for Round Cove, which there is a moratorium already, but B would be eliminated.
And you don't believe there's any other references proposed within this? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're not doing an accept and adopt. We're just doing a placement. So I mean, if they come back with a language that coincides with what we're looking to see, then we vote to accept and adopt.
In my mind, I've read it 14 times, and with the removal of B, I'm willing to accept and adopt it and move on. But
Fine, but I'm just saying, this is just putting it back on with the proviso that
yeah,
it
this
doesn't.
motion is only to put it back on, with the removal of B and any reference to moratoriums in Herring River. That's a good motion, Mary.
Was my motion good?
Yes.
Yes, it was.
Don seconded it.
Yes, I did.
So with what I just said, does anyone in the public wish to continue this conversation? Thank you. Roll call, Larry?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Would you do a motion to accept and adopt? Same article, same
I
language?
move that we vote to accept and adopt the Harwich Water Dependent Structures Bylaw, Chapter 304, minus the moratorium,
In Herring River.
minus,
The Herring River.
in the
Portion.
Herring River.
Okay, move to accept and adopt the article that we just approved to put in the town.
Can you do that without going back to commission first?
What's that?
I think that would need to go back to commission before we take that step.
You want to withdraw your second?
I didn't
No one seconded it.
Nobody seconded
You wanna
it.
withdraw your
We'd be
motion?
approving a
Withdraw my
presumptive
motion.
language change that we haven't seen.
Well, to me, it's striking B, but whatever you want to
Yeah.
do. We have
But
2
just
more
proce-
weeks to finalize the
Yeah.
warrant, is my point.
Just
Okay,
procedurally.
we'll bring it back.
Okay.
Thank you, and thank
But
everyone
we
who
have a
came.
placeholder for it on the warrant.
Thank you all.
All right,
Thank
Thank you.
Joe, the next one is Historic District, Historic Commission Amendments to Chapter 131 of the Harwich Code. I know this was being worked on by the town planner. Are we ready?
We're not. I spoke with the chair earlier this evening. I believe they're going to have a meeting on Friday to get public input, and so we would contemplate having the language available for Monday's version.
Okay. All right, capital articles.
So very quickly, if I could, Mr. Chairman, just with regard to what you have left on item J, items J, K, and L, really, they all tie back to the warrant in some form or another. Certainly, capital articles, I have an update in your material in your packet, but I would just ask the board's discretion that you sort of open it up relative to all those topics, because they all relate back to town meeting, they all relate back to the warrant, and many of them are going to relate back to the budget. So with regard to capital articles, and working off of the two public hearings the Board of Selectmen held jointly with the Finance Committee, I did present to the Capital Outlay Committee last Thursday my recommended changes to the capital outlay budget for fiscal year '23 to, in an effort to free up free cash. And so, Mr. Chairman, members, you should have in your packet a single sheet that says available balance, $3,076,202, and then it has the headers of item, purpose, amount, proposed reductions, and notes. And so what this gets to is any number of items that we have traditionally in the past funded through free cash, as well as what has been proposed in the fiscal year '23 capital outlay budget. And you can see my recommendations on what has been kept and what has been removed. I want to emphasize that it is not a simple exercise of just taking from the proposed column and putting in the reduction column. Every one of these actions has a very serious reaction, but I know the board is desirous of trying to accomplish what we typically accomplish with ever-tightening revenue constraints. So I don't know if the board wants to go through that page first, but it does relate to capital, and it's why we have placeholders presently in the warrant and not finalized language for capital.
Okay. Board want to tackle this now or after we tackle some of the other things that we have an audience for?
I would like, Michael, to, on some of the reductions, did these disappear, or did they move into operating budget or some other funding source?
No, thank you for the question. It was a similar question that was asked last week. No, they are completely removed from the fiscal year '23 capital outlay budget unless restored by the board. I did not push them to out years, and I did not fund them in any other way.
Larry?
Clarify that. They don't show up in the out years then, they're disappeared?
Correct.
So
That's the intent at this point.
And they'll come back for reconsideration?
Correct.
But we have a plan for the next 4 years, right? We have a budget this year, then a plan for 4 years. Is that still in draft form, that plan, so they could show up before it goes to town meeting and out in the out years?
So the plan will actually go in front of the Finance Committee on Thursday, as required by charter, both the budget and the plan. And at that point, it would no longer be draft. I will tell you that the Capital Outlay Committee approved the outlying 4 years without any changes. So I can push that forward immediately if you'd like.
Okay, so these,
So these items were.
They're gone, period.
Well, they're not gone because the board has the final say.
we
Capital
vote
Outlay
they're
advises
gone.
me, and you folks direct me after their advice.
Well, some of them I'm fine with. Some of these, the fire equipment, that's tough to pull out. If we pull out this year, they need the following years. I have no problem with the, like the golf carts, they could maybe could be picked up by the golf course anyway at a later time based on their budget. But some of these, I think they're problematic.
Well, and ultimately, this is meant for a longer discussion.
Yeah.
Because
We can
this
bring it
is
back.
an effort that we had $3 million with $5 million worth of expenditures if you
No.
go into the budget. And really what we're looking at is that overall budget
Yeah,
number.
yeah. No, I got that, Michael. My concern was the key for me is he dropped completely or moved into an out year. Because some of these, I think, are still going to be needed.
And I know we have department heads here tonight that would fight for their immediate needs, so
Right.
I do think we'll move on for this for a moment anyway.
Sure.
And then bring this back, and I know at least one department head wanted to speak about his request, so why don't we take up petition articles? I imagine some people are here for petition articles. How many are here to speak on a petition article? Okay. Whoever wants to present the first petition article, your petition article, go ahead and get up. Go ahead.
Are you returning to the last item tonight or another night?
We are returning to that item tonight.
So, Mr. Chairman, if we go in order, the first one you see is a citizen petition to amend Mass General laws covering the dispersals of school choice funds.
Okay, yeah, you're welcome at the table or the podium, whatever you're most comfortable at.
Great, thanks.
Just state your name for the record.
Okay, Dan Baker from 54 North Westgate Road in Harwich.
Welcome.
Thank you. I took the initiative to bring forward an article about the school choice program and the dispersal of funds. The fact that it excludes accredited homeschoolers and private schoolers from the program. And basically, if you're a homeschooler or private school, you've chosen an alternate education for your child, you have to pay for 100% out of pocket for that education, and also continue supporting the public school system without any ability to recoup those funds. So basically, I'm bringing this forward to garner local support for it and to compel the state legislature to look at it and to amend the general laws to accommodate that.
Great job. Comments, Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I fully appreciate what you're saying. As a matter of fact, an oddity of the current law, too, is that even public schools, which charter schools are, don't get any school building money at all. So everybody keeps talking about how every kid is treated equitably, and that's not true. And I can appreciate the idea that you're getting assessed something that you get no value at all out of.
Exactly.
Mary?
I do get that, and I appreciate what you're trying to do here. My concern is the public schools are the schools for people that have no money. They don't have a choice to do something else, and I'm very reluctant to take any money from the public schools, although Scott Carpenter might feel differently, and divert it to schools that basically are a choice for people that have the money or have the ability to teach at home. So I have some concerns.
Well, not everybody has the money for that, and this would give money for people to do the alternative learning. I mean, there are people within the public school system which it's not exactly the perfect fit for them, not the best learning environment, and this would provide funding to help them with that.
All set?
All set.
Julie?
Yeah, I have similar concerns as to Mary, and I would also say that, you know, that this is difficult in terms of trying to get this changed at a state level, but I would also say that, you know, you get into the issue of criteria, assessment, and all the other things to be fair to the children, too, who are going through either homeschooling or private school. And to that point, if somebody can afford private school, I wouldn't look to divert public money to private school.
Larry?
Well, I think Julie makes a good point. I think you've chosen a difficult item to pursue. But I'm in favor of as many options as possible to give kids opportunities, so I would support it.
That's the idea, exactly.
I think homeschooling is very real now.
Well,
and
they're
parents need
accredited
a break.
programs and nationally recognized, so it's not
Go
in
ahead,
the
John.
shadows anymore.
But having said the supportful stuff, I'm going to throw a wet blanket on this a little bit. Procedurally, you can't instruct the Board of Selectmen to do anything. You can authorize them.
Yeah, that's what the town council came back and said, but yeah, we're asking you to put forth whatever comes out of town meeting, if it's positive, to the state legislature to let them know that the town would like you to look at it.
I personally think the state needs to do a lot more.
Exactly.
Anyone wish to speak on this, pro or against? Come right up to the podium. And then just state your name for the record.
Hi, my name is April. I just want to make a point to let people know that a lot of people,
Last name?
What's your last name?
Croker,
Thank
sorry.
you. Thank you.
A lot of people don't feel like removing their child from the public school system is a choice. They feel like they have no other choice because they feel that the public school system is not a safe environment for many different reasons. Sometimes it's for a religious reason. Sometimes it's actually a physical reason. Sometimes you feel there's an agenda being pushed in the school system, which is very real right now, though people love to try to pretend that that's not happening. and parents need to have ways to protect their children. We should have some kind of help when trying to do this at home on our own. And I thought that comment was really discriminatory over here on this side, trying to say that public school was for, what was it, people that were poor or had no money. Sorry to say, but being a homeschool family does not mean that you have a lot of money. In fact, you need some help. I'm a homeschooling mother, and we need help. And not only that, but I run a homeschool group. I work with homeschool families, and there are more people on Cape Cod choosing homeschool right now because they do not feel safe in the public school than for any other reason. I want you to understand that. It's not like, oh, hey, let's stay home. Give us some money. There are real reasons for it, and people need support.
I would agree, a lot of people are withdrawing their kids from school. Anyone else? Thank you very much. And I'm sure we'll have a conversation. Oh, we got one more, but we'll have
My
a
name is
conversation.
Tracy Crahan, and I'm a homeschooled mom of 7 children. I homeschooled back when maybe a lot of people weren't doing it. My oldest daughter's 32. My youngest son is 19. I am now helping my grown children who are married that have children homeschool my grandchildren. And we paid out of pocket, you know, we still paid the money to the town, okay? And I work full-time, and I worked full-time then. My husband worked full-time then. And we didn't do it because we had money to do it. We did it for a lot of different private reasons. And the environment when we homeschooled our children in the public sector wasn't half as bad as it is now, in my opinion. And my understanding, I did a lot of research before I homeschooled our children, and the states used to have the say about, how the funds were spent, but now it's the federal Department of, whatever it is, the federal government controls a school, and it's very cookie cutter. I am grateful that my children were homeschooled, and I'm grateful that I'm helping to homeschool my grandchildren, and I'm hoping that there'll be a better future for my adult children, that I'm, so that they will get a little bit of help in having the funds to do the choice that they're making for the education of their children. And if you haven't researched homeschooling, I would suggest that you research the history of it, how it came about, and why millions of families do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Next petition article is what, Joe?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just looking for council's comments on these articles if the board asks. The next one in the warrant is one that was actually expected to be standard, but the folks took the initiative to get it on here, and that would be to defray the expenses of the Chase Library and the Harwich Port Library, and the amount sought is $20,000. You may recall last year we took the initiative to make that a board article. They have citizen petitioned it. Regardless, I would recommend that we approve this one.
Thank you, Joe. Anyone here to speak on that one tonight? It's in the warrant. What other action do you want on that?
If the board wanted to recommend, accept and adopt.
I move we accept and adopt as written.
Yeah, second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call vote. Larry?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
And I'm an aye.
And just to let you know, the Finance Committee has already voted that one, 6 in favor, 0 against, 1 abstain, so both have recommended it. Mr. Chairman, the next citizen petition gets to prohibit hunting in Bell's Neck Conservation Area. And it was a petition of a Carol Kucha Stone, if I'm saying that right.
Mrs. Stone, if you want to join the podium or the seat up front here, either one you want. I don't blame you. Good evening.
Good evening. In case you wanted me to introduce myself, my name is Carol Kusha Stone, and I've introduced the proposition to outlaw hunting in the Bells Neck area. The trails navigate over 272 acres. The conservation land is where many in the community hike, bike, kayak, paddleboard, and cross-country ski, weather permitting. It is a local hotspot for dog walking. Please help keep it safe. With this basic letter, I have collected over 200 signatures of Harwich residents saying that by signing the vote, they are against hunting in the Bell's Neck. Folks that live in West Harwich are quite eager to sign and would like to enjoy their homes without listening to gunshots at 4:30, as well as after dusk. Safety is the most important tenet of this discussion. The safety of those that enjoy Bell's Neck. There are other places to hunt in Harwich. Robbins Pond Conservation Area, Island Pond, the town forest, Hawk's Nest, and the land behind the community gardens. And what would the reaction be if a 6-year-old was playing in the woods on a trail with his parents and a hunter saw that flash of white that they look for? Would we then think we should have outlawed hunting in Bell's Neck?
Thank you.
Sure.
Comments, questions from the board, Larry?
Is there a hunting season now at Bell's Neck?
No?
And you mentioned,
You mean like now?
right, I mean, can they
In
hunt all
March.
year round, or?
No. There's 4 months for ducks, and I'm not sure what it is for deer. But this past weekend, when I was collecting signatures on Saturday at the recycle area, 2 different people told me that they had been at Red River Beach and people had shot seagulls. Now, you know, there's
But that's
because
different
of
than-
it.
go
No,
ahead.
I know. There's no seagull season. Everyone is having a very hard time post-COVID. Emotions are high. And on top of that, the horrible stuff going on in Europe. But there should be enforcement of laws to protect public safety. And the fact that people are willing to kill seagulls is nuts. So I know it's a sidebar, but
Yeah, that's a different area. I'm trying to focus
Yeah.
on Bell's Neck right now. There, do people actually hunt after dark?
yes. I'm taking this from a woman who lives there.
So is the problem no hunting, or is the problem enforcement of what we,
Oh,
the
bigger
rules
problem
now.
with enforcement. And there's definitely shots that start at 4:30 in the morning. Everyone in West Harwich can attest to that.
okay,
You're awoken and you look at your thing and you go, what? It's not how I want to wake up.
thank you.
Julie?
How many, do you happen to know, or do you, Joe, how many areas in town can hunting occur on? Do we
I
have a
just
limit?
listed 5 or so.
No, but I mean, other than Bell's Neck area.
That's what I'm saying.
So,
Amy gave me that list because I
Okay,
did
so-
not know myself.
okay, so those are the only areas, because those are from Amy?
Yes,
Okay, all right,
as far as I know.
okay.
And if I may, I'm not aware of any. I would have to check with Amy.
Okay. No, I just wanted to make sure that
Yep.
those were the whole list. And so when you say that the hunting goes on either from the early morning into the evening, and so do you ever see anyone out there in terms of patrolling if people are making calls?
Well, the woman that was so upset about this party with 3 cars of people from New Jersey, she called the police, she called the conservation officer, he arrived the next day. Well, that's not gonna, and this was definite shooting in the dark in a party atmosphere, whatever was going on.
Thank you.
Mary?
This is a tough one for me. You know, I'm not a fan of guns and shooting God's creatures, but I do respect whatever amendment that is, that people have the right to hunt. It sounds like there are some instances gone wrong, but a group of 3 cars carrying on we could make 100 laws, and they're still gonna go there and have something to drink and shoot. I don't know, I'm reluctant to do this.
Don?
I'm somewhere a little bit beyond that because I have had gun training, but I don't hunt. My problem with this is, could somebody do something bad on the roads? Yeah. Could somebody do something bad in the air? Yeah. How many actual near misses are you talking about? I mean, this sounds like a solution in search of a problem, more than it is a legitimate discourse. The question I have for the chief is, what kind of logs do you have of numbers of complaints in that area?
Do you want me to answer that, chief?
What, 2?
I
was told
Yeah.
2 in the last year.
Two complaints, no found complaints.
Okay.
You agree?
But
I would have to
also-
check.
I did.
I know there was a
For your
request.
request, I talked to the records clerk, and that's what.
Thank you.
There certainly is complaints, and I guess I would just start my comments with.
I would like to add
Go
one
ahead,
more
go
thing.
ahead.
I live at the top of a conservation area that's jointly owned by the Harwich Conservation Trust that adjoins the town forest. Hear shooting all the time. When I hear something that's more heavy gauge, I'll call the police. But you can't presume that people who have to get hunting licenses are ignorant of safety out when they're hunting. I mean, if we were to ban hunting everywhere throughout the whole country, there'd be a whole lot of people who would be denied something that they haven't done anything wrong about. I live in a house that could be considered at risk from a random bullet of somebody who doesn't know what they're doing, but I've never begrudged somebody pursuing something they can do legally and safely.
Well, I have nothing against hunting in Vermont, Maine, New Hampshire. Cape Cod anymore has changed so much in less than 20 years that,
So in your mind,
That's-
this should be everywhere.
sorry?
So in your mind, this ban should be everywhere eventually on Cape
No,
Cod.
I'm just, what affects me, I live in West Harwich. And my husband for 10 or 12 years was on the Trails Committee till it was done away with. And he was there every day. He's walked the dog, it was good for his health. And believe me, I mean, skinning animals and leaving them, this is verified. This is gross. But no, I'm not trying to change the world. They say act locally. That's what I'm trying to do.
What's that? I'll keep my comments brief. I know this is very emotional, and your husband was certainly a great steward of Bell's Neck, undeniable. To answer your question, Julie, hunting, as long as it's not marked private property or no hunting, 150 feet from a road, 500 feet from a dwelling. And there is a fair amount of land in Harwich. Keep in mind, we did give up Thompson's Field. That is a big one that won at town meeting, and it is a dog walking place, not a hunting place. Harwich Conservation. Go ahead.
I will be getting I didn't realize this was going to happen, till 2 days ago or 1 day ago. I presume I'm going back in front of the Conservation Committee. There is a woman who is 98 or so, who lives right up the street from me that I know, and her daughter is there caring for her in the next house. They have a letter that they are preparing that people with lights behind their property, now this is right on Depot Road West, and going out there and shotguns. I mean, this is,
Yeah, let's.
this is.
I don't want to interrupt you, and
Okay,
we certainly
no
gave you
problem.
your time to speak, so I would like to have mine. Harwich Conservation Trust owns 635 acres of land, no hunting on that 635 acres of land. Hunting season on Cape Cod really is ducks and deer. Deer season is only 2 weeks of gun, the rest of it is bow and arrow. Bell's Neck is a piece of land that is surrounded, there's roads that cut through there, trails that cut through there. Nobody stands on those trails and hunts. The incidences that you've spoke of are all third-party incidences. The woman that you claimed someone shot a mother and 2 does, that's against state law. The 3 cars from New Jersey that were shooting shotguns and whatever, that is against state law. They were shooting beside the road. Everything that has been mentioned in any forum that you've been able to do this in is all third-hand information, and it's all related to people breaking laws. I've been in the hunting business basically my entire life. And the way that the hunters are being portrayed, they're being portrayed in the same group as the criminals. And just last week, Amy told me that they put a new footbridge in on North Road, and somebody came through with a dirt bike and snapped the steps off of it the first day it was out there. That, again, is a broken law. We have a great police department. Nobody can tell me that if somebody calls the police department, there's 3 cars from New Jersey shooting shotguns on the side of a road, that our police department's not gonna show up in force. This is an emotional issue for a lot of people, but it's not, there's no reality to problems. We're trying to ban something based on 0. There's been 0 instances in there. Only instances that can be described are third-party instances, but there's been no instance where a hunter has shot at somebody or where there's been a close call that our police department's been able to document.
Then
And
should I bring the witnesses to you
I would bring them to
folks?
town meeting, and if they're from town and the moderator lets them speak, then by all means, because this is also an advisory
Correct.
article, and I would just hope that we could lose the emotion part of this on both sides. And just on my side, for full disclosure, it doesn't matter what I say, I'll get written up tomorrow in either the paper or Harwich Old Times. Whoever's online with an open mic, you gotta shut it off. So, in the end, my colleagues can all be against it, but I'll be the one that takes the brunt of it. Our law firm has said that I don't have to recuse myself from this, and that was a foolish notion of somebody saying that I should recuse myself of this. I'm gonna speak only of fact on the floor, and the fact is, right now, that we do not have. Could there be one in the future? Maybe, but I say best of
We've
luck.
had problems, and both the police and the environmental police do not respond quickly enough. I can quote those instances too. I'll bring firsthand people.
And that's where this belongs, is on town meeting floor, so, excellent, and thank you for coming tonight. Joe?
Mr. Chairman, the opinion that came back from council was just, it was unclear to council whether this was intended to be a non-binding directive or if it was intended to change the bylaw. Is it your intent for it to be non-binding?
Well, that's where it is right now, but it's not that big a deal to change it to the other thing. That's how it was explained to me. Whether that's correct or not, I don't know.
So if it's intended to be a bylaw,
Yes,
it's not in proper form.
according to me,
Right, so it's not in proper form to change the bylaw.
right. But I would still like the town to vote on it, how they feel about it.
So the intent is to either change the bylaw or to get a non-binding directive. If you're telling us it's to change the bylaw, the moderator will probably rule it out of order because it's not in proper form.
Okay, we'll go with the non-binding.
All set? We good? Okay. Thank you again. Where are we now, Joe?
Do you all mind voting on it, even in the shape that it's in, with my third, fourth-hand knowledge of what goes on there?
Does anyone want to make a motion? Public input? Anyone in the public wish to speak on this? Can we get
It's
a motion?
already on the warrant. It's just a question of whether we support it or
Right.
not.
I think that's what you're asking for, is a support. Does anyone want to make a positive motion?
Hot topic.
I'd say, I mean, if the board doesn't want to make a positive motion and you want to vote this down, we can make a positive motion and vote 5 noes. That's the other way to do this, if you want something in the warrant. And I think we're being asked for something We're being
No,
asked
I'm,
for a
I'm
position.
curious, because I thought the whole
Well, let's
purpose
force a
of-
vote, and I'll move that we place it on the warrant article.
No,
So-
this would be a move to accept and
You
adopt.
could make
a
a
motion-
motion to
no, move to
propose
adopt.
indefinite postponement.
It's already, it's going on the
It's
warrant.
on
No,
the
it's going on the warrant.
The-
So
the-
our motion, our move is to support it or not.
Right, which is
And I-
accept and adopt.
And I move that we, well, it's being accepted on the warrant because petition already, move we adopt.
But Joe's language is for support, accept, and adopt, right?
That's what we've used for several years.
Okay, move to support and accept and adopt.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of supporting it, and I'll do roll call vote. Don?
Nope.
Mary?
No,
Julie?
No.
Larry?
No.
And I'm a no. 0 to 5.
It's okay.
Thank you. No, of course.
Thank you.
Procedurally though, Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Go ahead.
so the board needs to recommend something. You've denied a positive
I
motion.
ahead, Don.
I make a motion that we recommend indefinite postponement.
second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call vote. Don?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Larry?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Next is that the Schoolhouse one, Joe?
First one is protect historic West Harwich Schoolhouse with a historic restriction. And it was a petition of Sally Urbano.
And that is on the warrant. Is anyone here tonight to speak on that? We'll move on from now. And then the next one, sell historic West Harwich.
I think I missed the cell, sorry. I think I missed cell.
Yeah, so the next
No,
one,
here we go, sorry, right.
You had two.
Sell
right?
historic West Harwich Schoolhouse using full provisions of Massachusetts Procurement Law 30B.
anyone to speak on that? Okay. So Joe, those will just be no position, I guess, unless the board wants to vote some position on that. It's in the warrant.
Right, it's in the warrant. The board has always taken positions on every article of some sort. You have a range of positions you could take.
Anyone want to take a position?
Well, if they're in the warrant, like the last one, we should just
This
get
is-
it out of the way,
This
right?
is a vote to indefinitely postpone or to support or not support. Don, any motion on this one?
No, I'm actually in favor of these articles, so pretty sure nobody else is.
Do you want to make that motion so we get a position on there or no?
No, somebody can make a motion for indefinite postponement, it's gonna be the same effect, because I'm gonna have the same vote.
So going back to the first one, then let's protect historic West Harwich Schoolhouse with historic restriction. Can can I get a motion to indefinitely postpone or a motion to support, one or the other?
So,
Go ahead.
just a clarification, just going back to our current RFP that we're putting out there.
It's gonna be a moot point if somebody buys it.
Right,
Right.
so.
But this is gonna be on the town meeting warrant because it's a petition article, so what the town administrator is saying is take a position.
Okay, I'm,
I think we should move to support it and then take a vote on it, and then at least we're done with it.
Okay.
So I move to.
You'd still have to do it, you might as well do the indefinite postponement, because you'd still have to make a second motion,
right, that's
You
what I was getting to.
get to the second position.
Parliamentarily, the board has to take a positive action on something. Rejecting does not constitute a positive action.
Okay,
So if we know,
Supporting indefinite postponement is a positive effect. You've caused something to be
positively postpone it.
correct.
Right,
Right,
that's,
then I move,
Rejecting motions does not achieve that.
I move to indefinitely postpone the article, protect historic West Harwich Schoolhouse with historic restriction.
second,
okay, moved and seconded, any discussion? Roll call vote, Larry?
No.
Julie?
Wait, no is, you want it on?
you,
Yeah, I know I'm voting for, yes.
Okay.
But thank you for that.
no.
You're voting to indefinitely postpone,
Right,
so
and
that's a
so,
yes.
yeah, it's a yes, so
Okay.
that's what I'm
I think
saying.
we're
like,
confusing each other.
Yeah.
A
So
yes
if
means
you
indefinite
support
postponement.
indefinitely postponing, it's a yes.
Are you postponing it?
No, I'm against, I want it on the warrant right now.
It's gonna be on the warrant.
Right.
We're
But-
voting the board's position.
And my board position is The motion was to indefinitely postpone it.
Correct.
Right,
And I'm voting nay to that.
Okay.
okay. Yes.
Yes.
Don?
No.
Yes, 3-2. Same motion on the next one.
I move that we indefinitely postpone sell historic West Harwich Schoolhouse using full provisions of Massachusetts Procurement Law 30B.
Could I ask for a clarification from Joe on that, what that,
I'll second it for discussion. Go ahead, go
yeah,
ahead.
just, Joe, could you clarify that for me? Because we're using procurement law now. What's the impact of that?
We are not
Correct, and
requiring
there's,
anything.
it talks about donating surplus property. So the essence of what council has written is, and as you may recall, the town's been operating under Chapter 30B, Section 16, which is the disposition of land. Section 15 lets you dispose of things by also donating, but that's everything but land. So this has a null effect. It has to be in the warrant because it was petitioned, but the net effect of this is a nullity because it can't happen the way it's written.
Go ahead, Don.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you,
Chair.
Don.
I understand that it's somewhat confusing and that it definitely isn't in accordance with the statute. However, in its purest sense, our RFP does not guarantee anything other than selling it. And this is actually saying that they want to preserve it in its exterior shape. So at least there's a statement to be made there because nothing can instruct you to do anything, as we all know. They can authorize, but they're not instructing.
Go ahead.
So, just to follow up on both of these items, I just want to clarify for the public. This isn't us just ignoring the historic value of the West Harwich Schoolhouse. This has been on the board's agenda for several years. And,
20?
yeah, so ultimately, what we're talking about here is saying that we could possibly gift it through 30B, through Chapter 30B, and that we haven't looked at that before, but we have. We have had extensive conversations with the various groups in West Harwich, who I really applaud for trying to save this building. And I think it's great that they're working on that, but we've never got anywhere with coming together to collectively find somebody to purchase this, to back them. So as much as I think it's a historic asset that'd be wonderful to protect, we have no plan other than the plan to go forward with the RFP. So, you know, this is for town meeting to decide. I'm certainly not trying to decide it, but we've debated this to such an extent that we came up with an RFP that did give a preference to any organization that wants to value the historic facade of it. The interior, no. When we no historic ability to regulate what goes on in the interior. We're just trying to get what we can for the town, money-wise. And I just think it's important because some people may be tuning in now thinking, we've ignored this. We haven't. It's been vetted several times for several years, not just by this group.
Go ahead, Mary.
And if I could just add to that, these two articles came because the West Harwich group doesn't like the fact that we're trying to sell the building. But right now, the last town meeting gave us the authority to sell it. This would then change it again, and what would stop another group from doing another article next year to sell it? I mean, we could have an article on this until we're all dead and buried.
Don?
The short take as a point of information, the RFP we have out gives no monetary value to protecting the facade. It says we prefer, but it doesn't say anything.
It gives a preference. That's right.
No, in what way would that be evaluated? There's nothing in the RFP that suggests that would change our opinion.
We've already debated all this too, so.
Yeah.
We're not in any race against town meeting. This has been decided by a past town meeting. We've fulfilled our obligation based on that vote. It's time to move on. If we get another dollar bid, we can talk about it again at town meeting. So we have a motion and a second. Larry? And this is a motion to indefinitely postpone.
I'll vote no again.
Okay. Julie?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Don?
No.
Yes. 3-2. Next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The last of the petition articles is study the best use options for former Harwich Middle School, including recommendations for financial self-sufficiency, and it was petitioned by Mr. Gunderson.
Good evening.
Good evening. We all calm down a little bit?
I'll come.
Okay. Okay. I felt quite safe back there. There's policemen, firemen.
I think confused was more of a better word, not.
Yeah,
We
well,
were calm but confused.
we were confused here, too. Okay, the petition that I presented, and that is in the draft warrant, is lengthy, and I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but I would like to just touch on a couple of points in a quick summary to explain where it came from, where the idea came from. I think you may have all experienced in the past few years, maybe the past half dozen years, when you talk to people around the town about the old or former middle school, or you call it the cultural center. I'm not ready yet to call it 302 Sisson.
204.
204?
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm not ready to do that yet, but I find that I got two different points of view. The first point of view was, why can't we find a better use for that property? Especially in light of the deficits totaling about $600,000 over the last 6 years. It's a legitimate question. The second group thinks, quite honestly, everything is just good the way it is. Don't mess with it. I had a conversation with two people outside the room last week who made it very clear to me they don't want any changes in what's going on there. So this background shaped my petition article. The study is an attempt to provide independent professional help to answer the first question, are there any better uses, and provide some planning guidance relating to a cultural center option specifically. So task one takes a fresh look, and I know there's been 2 repurpose committees. We've heard all about them. I attended a lot of the meetings myself. To identify the highest value and best use of the property. You have to realize our position here is not unique. I did pick up one statistic. The National Center for Educational Statistics shows that about 1,300 schools every year close. Actually, the children's population is decreasing throughout the country, but I'm sure they're closing for other reasons as well. The first task, which is finding a better use, is a more classical application of a 4-part approach that others have talked about here about a week ago, Bob Piantadosi being one. It is to identify and analyze uses that are legally permissible, physically possible, maximally productive, and financially feasible. Each option that is identified will be evaluated, pros, cons, and risks, and before someone asks on the board, there is not enough money in the revolving fund to do a thorough cost-benefit analysis of any of the options that are identified. If any highly recommended uses outside of a cultural center come out of this study, those uses would be vetted and discussed at numerous future open meetings. This is not an attempt to go around the public input. It just looks at the question from a more objective outside viewpoint first. Task 2 says that given the significant amount of money and time that's already been expended in the past 6 years, what can be done to improve the use as a cultural center? It is intended to investigate other organizations on the Cape and near to the Cape to identify what makes them financially viable. And I use those words carefully because some people object to being financially viable. Janelle Brown, who actually made the motion back in June of 2016, has mentioned on Facebook page of a cultural center that is in Maynard, a former 55,000 square foot school building. It also is a nonprofit organization and doing quite well. So this study will provide what is needed to get from where we are now, which is mostly, and I can be criticized for this too, mostly a room rental business, to the end state of self-sufficiency and more complete offerings, typical of a real cultural performing arts education center. Lastly, this project will develop a comprehensive business plan that looks forward and addresses the mix of scheduling of offerings, competition for talent, pricing, financial plans, capital improvement plans, and estimates of cost out 5 to 8 years, marketing, advertising, communication, media, staffing, and organizational options. If you want it to be a success, much of this is needed. The cost is $75,000. The source of funds is the Middle School Cultural Center Revolving Fund, which as of 12/31/21, and I'm sure there's more current data, had well over 300,000. I think it was 327,000 as of the end of last calendar year. Legal opinion from Town Council has okayed the use of that funding source as appropriate under the care and support language of the bylaw, as long as the contracted study is executed when sufficient funds are still in the account. So it becomes a race. If we can spend it sooner than the rest of the town, we get a chance to spend it for this purpose. That's about it. I think the lengthy explanation in the article is self-explanatory, but I went a little bit overboard on some of mine too. So if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer.
Thank you. Larry?
No, I think it's a very detailed letter in your response here. We've had the Cultural Center for, 6 years? And I think it's had a lot of successes, but I think I'm in favor of a plan. I think now's the time to review that. My guess is that it's, people in town want it, but we also have had a lot of people that have said we're missing a lot of opportunities. We're not using to its capacity. We're not exploring other opportunities. And I think it's worthwhile to take a look at that and see what our best uses are, and take better advantage of the, because this is costing us money. It's going to cost us more going forward. Mm-hmm. And, that's okay if the town goes for it, but we do need a new look at the vision and the plan going forward, in my opinion.
Thank you. Julie?
So when I look at this article, I understand there are different points of view on this, and we've talked about it extensively, and I understand there are some who want to look at other uses. There are others who feel that the cultural center's, moving forward and doing well, and we're looking to hire somebody to be dedicated to that. I look at this and see $75,000 for a feasibility study with not knowing what net result is gonna come from that, and more money spent on it where we're already, I guess I would use the word incubating a great asset to the town there. Both that physical building, that's an asset, and what happens inside that building is an asset. I think that there's lots more that could happen inside that building. I think that the auditorium could be used more effectively. I think the cafeteria represents a great point that somebody also may be interested in. I think evening courses, I think there's a lot that can be done with that building. I was on the board when we voted to go that route in 2016. That was a brand new endeavor. We've come a long way. I also would say that there are certain things in town that contribute to the culture of the town and to the citizens of the town that aren't necessarily self-sustaining financially. And I think that's an important thing. There are young people using that building. There are middle-aged people and elderly people using that building. So I think all of that tells you where I stand on that.
Thank you. Mary?
Yeah, I always like to read your literature, Mr. Gunderson, because it's very thorough, and you present a really solid picture, so I applaud that.
Thank you.
However, I would rather spend that same $75,000 on an employee. We already know what we were able to do with the building, with the Carolyn doing that half-time while she was doing her other job. Having a full-time person there, I'm confident we can utilize all the spaces Julie just talked about and make that quite the place.
Don?
That's it.
Again, I agree with Mary that it's very thorough, but silly me, I was sitting here for the longest time over the last couple of years thinking that it might be a good thing for us to sit down and engage in dialogue rather than doing this and have stakeholders involved. People like the Cultural Council, the Chamber of Commerce, the Artists Guild. We have a vibrant community, and is this maxed out? Are we doing everything we should be? Probably not. But this should have been a discussion as a precursor to something like this. So it could be accomplished without $75,000 with having you sit down with all these other people after they map out aspirationally what they see this thing to be. It's obviously not where it's supposed to be. It's not. It's just rentals for a few of these suites. The possibility of putting on presentations and larger scale things, even in the second floor, never mind the performance areas, is immense. And there's some money-making opportunities there as well as cultural, but not everything. And I'll go further. Forget about cultural. You think the $250,000 we're going to spend on a pickleball court is actually going to be recouped anytime in the near term? There's a lot of things that are wishes, but if they're aspirational for the town, that's what governments do. So the question is, how do we approach making this thing better? And I would have just preferred to sit down and have a series of discussions in a formal way.
Richard, do you want to respond?
Yeah, I'd like to, please. You know, if this was 1 year out from when the original motion was approved, and I do recommend highly that you at least go look at the minutes of that meeting on June 13th, 2016, because it does have significant amount of wording in there about financially self-sustaining, viable, all of the discussion either in the minutes or in the plan that was put together by the former town administrator proposal, which was discussed at length. And all of the discussion, where some of you were in that meeting, talked about financial self-sustaining. Not that it has to be done every year, but it's a goal. If you don't have a goal, then I think you end up with what's happened in the past 6 years. You've lost $600,000 that could have been spent on hiring a policeman or a fireman or for the school budget. So it isn't just 1 year or 2 year where the experiment and the interim use plan hasn't been a chance to succeed. It's 6 years. And by the way, it really doesn't extend, I believe, to spring of 2024, as the town administrator has suggested. It's really 15 months from now. And I would suggest you look into that, because you got really 1 more year. Now, you can always extend it. You can pass another motion to go forward with it. But legitimately, you've got 1 more year and a few months to make a success. And you do have to do what Don just said, bring in somebody who can speak for the nonprofit organizations around. I got up a week ago and said there's 35 nonprofits. There are, and they all offer some form or another of cultural experience, education, theater. And yet we can't find in this town enough nucleus of those people to do what Don just suggested. It could be a much bigger success. A nonprofit has opportunities to bring in extra funds that a town can't do. I mean, they can get sponsorships. They can go out and ask for funding and money, not just grants, but donations, requests. People leave money to these agencies. It's the way to get ahead. That's why there's so many nonprofits that do it.
Richard, I'll cut you off. I want to get to a few more people.
Yeah,
I'm
okay.
taking note of the clock. One question to Joe before I give my comments, then call on Mr. Waystack. What's the difference in the employee that we're trying to hire right now, including benefits, and what we're currently paying part-time people with no defined role to be in that building?
There's not an easy answer to the way you've asked the question.
Give me your answer.
So the analysis that I've done that was added to the packet shows that between, because the reason why it's not easy is some folks have just focused on the program aid positions that the town has used, neglecting to look at the fact that there has been an operational budget, full-time, permanent manager whose salary also impacts upon that building. And so when you analyze it in that light, and I have all the documentation to back it up, we're looking to spend close to $71,000 this year. and and that's not including any benefits of any of the permanent employees. Straight up consideration for the proposed director is $76,000 based on an existing classification and compensation plan.
So let me round up and say $30,000, even though there's only about a $5,000 difference.
Can I answer that question, though?
Not yet.
No? Okay.
But whatever we put for a number on there, I find it really ironic that we have spent this much time and that we've received this many emails on putting a person in there, and I keep getting asked by people, what's the plan? What's the plan? Well, my plan is, put somebody in there in charge of it, give them a job description, and then build something. Because we've built something pretty significant with part-time help and people bouncing from one building to another building. And I would say, Richard, your numbers have always been perfect for me. You analyze things and you add a whole nother level to some of our discussions, and I appreciate it. Wasting what we don't do in the private sector, which I'm often warned not to compare the two, is we don't throw $75,000 to study something to sell. And quite frankly, I think it's a waste of money, given that we have 15 months left, not to hire an employee that their sole duty is to grow that to a point where, and I'm not going to admit tonight to losing the $600,000 because there's a lot of numbers that are being lost here. Vacant insurance coverage, vacant building insurance coverage, we will at least 5 times what we're paying right now. We're never going to get out of the burden of the elementary school wastewater. So there's a lot of other factors, but in an $80 million budget, I find it ironic that we can't find a place for one person to try and grow this 67,000 square foot building on 6.5 acres that we all already admit that only half of it's being used. But that seems to be the focus in this $80 million budget. It's crazy to me. Go ahead.
Well, obviously, there's a lot of other opinions.
Yeah.
The answer, first of all, of what the difference in cost, if you looked at the revenue expense chart that was put together by Carol Coppola, if you looked at the 3 years of full expenditures for 2 administrative assistants, it ends up being an average of $36,000 a year because there's no benefits. And that's, I trust her numbers, $36,000 a year. You're now turning around and looking at a $76,000 or $71,000 plus 49% overhead or whatever. You're looking at $100,000. The difference between what we've been able to do with 2 part-time people and Carolyn, but she got it up and running. She had help from Sean Libby. She had help from you guys. But I'm saying it is a savings of money to do it with part-time people, particularly you're hiring a full-time municipal employee who very likely in 1 year, if you think you're going to get this to be what you want it to be, is going to be looked at as an extra employee because it'll be taken over by a nonprofit. If it isn't taken over by a nonprofit, you'll never make money.
Mr. Waystack.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be brief. I spoke on this a week ago, virtually. A couple of brief things. Talked about a plan. You just had a plan. Our town administrator has a plan with a full-time employee. And I've heard a lot of comparisons to the Cultural Center of Cape Cod over in South Yarmouth. That's a building that's 1/10 of the size of this building. And the first repurpose committee came up with a plan, which I think if a study is done, if you spend $50,000, $75,000, $100,000, you're going to find the same result. The best use for the building is housing. There was an offer for $650,000 for this building for housing. The community did not embrace it. They didn't feel that they were going to give this building away for that kind of money. We've had issues with other town buildings that we're not getting offers for. And to give it to a nonprofit, sure, give it to me. I'll be happy to take over the building if you want to give it to me for $1. I'll make it work. But the town already turned down $650,000 for housing there. There's a plan for this. There's an employee in place. There are people in there who are working darn hard, and less than half of the building has been utilized. With a plan in place, bring another groups together, Mr. Howell, as you say. Bring some other stakeholders together. Come up with a plan with the director who will make this building viable. You heard the $588,000. There's $300,000 in a revolving fund right now. This building is an asset to this community. We've already said, the first repurpose committee did not want housing there. The community, actually the committee did, but the community did not embrace it for $650,000. I think, Mr. Chairman, you have a plan. I think the town administrator has a plan, and we should follow that plan. I would ask you to not endorse this article.
Thank you. Joe?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to try and balance some of the comments that were made previously. First, with regard to my analysis of the salary, I did not ignore the work done by our finance director's town accountant. However, her report and the present reality, the town has never accounted for the managers, plural, that have overseen that building and that operation. When Ms. Carey stepped down from that role in the fall, it was transferred to Ms. Eldridge. And that's real time that Ms. Eldridge has spent with the salary that the town gives her working on that. Now, I've estimated that out to be, it was half of her time from October until January, when we were able to bring in Talitha Abramson to be the program aide, embodied the two roles, if you will. So we've never accounted for that part of the salary. And I emphasize that because my statement all along has been simply to try to remain dispassionate about this entire issue. We have a program that is run at a town building that has funding that comes in. There is no other program that the town has that is not run at a town building that does not have a manager running it. So the premise for me is simple. There was a change in personnel, and the change is immaterial but still relevant. No manager, no program. No program, no funding. No funding, no building. So the effort with the Director of Cultural Affairs is to address that critical concern, because as of July 1st, there is no manager earmarked for that program. And we can call it the center, we can call it affairs, we can call it a program. But there is no manager after June 30th of this year, because Ms. Eldridge cannot continue in that role, and what we had were two program aides with a manager. Second point I want to correct for the record, it was mentioned that the plan of the board, what's referred to as the interim use plan, the board's minutes on Monday, April 23rd, 2018, which will be on page 3 of those minutes, comes under the agenda topic of extension of the 2-year trial. And this is a direct quote coming right from those minutes. Ms. Brown moved to extend the 2-year trial period another 5 years. So 6 years from now ended. Ms. Kavanaugh seconded the motion. The board took comments from Mr. McManus, representing the Cranberry Festival, who commented that he applauded the board for considering this extension. The motion carried by a unanimous vote. A motion that carries on April 23rd, 2018, for 6 years from now ended, says that it ends in 2 years. Now, what's implied in all of that is the Board of Selectmen then, the Board of Selectmen now, and the Board of Selectmen in the future, barring any other actions of the town, are solely responsible for the care, custody, and control of that building. The previous speaker said, and he's absolutely right, the board could vote with proper notice, say next week, to end the interim plan. The board could vote next week to extend the interim plan for 27 years or until the administrator retires, whichever comes first. In other words, it's well within the Board of Selectmen's discretion on your building. And so I've read the minutes. I've read all the minutes from all of the meetings that have impacted upon what should be an irrefutable fact that the building on Sisson Road has had a legal address of 204 Sisson Road since at least 1953. So we can argue about whether it's a middle school, whether it's a cultural center, but it is in fact and indeed, and I use the word deed specifically, the assessor's deed, known as a municipal building that is at 204 Sisson Road. Because it's a municipal building, it's your building. Because it has a program in there, it's your program. For me, The question simply before the town is, what are we to do with that program?
Thank you,
Just 2 points, and I'll make it quick.
thank you.
Number one, I've been listening to these board meetings for a long time. Larry, out of all, has been asking for a plan. That was the attempt. I don't know if Don wants a plan. I don't know if you want a plan, but it would be a business plan that anybody could follow, because you haven't got one. Number two, I think those minutes are wrong, just for the heck of it. It's a nitpicking deal, but if you look at the tape, the video,
May I ask for a
Mr.
point of order?
why?
The minutes that were read were marked approved by the board.
Right, so just
That isn't
finish.
it.
Well, which,
Go ahead, finish.
okay, I'm just going to suggest that somebody look at the tape, because Mike restated as chairman at that time what the vote was going to be. It was all back and forth up here. Carolyn was sitting there with her assistant. So I'm saying, he said, 5 years. 5 years more, not 6. And at the end of the vote, and I watched it today, Mike looks at, you can smirk all you want, I'm just telling you the truth, look at it. So if it has precedence over the minutes, which are stated wrong, then it is a 5 more year extension, not a 6 more year.
We'll get to that, I don't want to get into that tonight.
Okay.
Honestly, I think we've heard enough to
Chairman,
vote support.
And I believe me, I've said enough, I'm
But
sorry.
I would beg the indulgence on 2 points, if I may.
Brief, thank you.
First, it was not meant to be a smirk, and it was not a smirk. It was a look to the chairman, because the point of order would be, the tape recording or the audio recordings do not displace the minutes. The minutes that are permanent records of the town, which are marked as such, indicate the vote that I just read. So to your point, the newspaper article, the audio recording, the recollection, the videotape, whatever it may be, pales in comparison to the minutes of the meeting. And again, so that's what we have to go by, because that is what's required under the open meeting law and the public records law. And last but not least, this board and future boards have the discretion to ignore, to expand, or go forward. But what I need to be clear on, if I may, is this is not an attempt by me to jury-rig the documents. I must rely upon what the board accepted as your minutes, and that is presently the fact of the land.
All right, let's wrap it up. Anyone else in the audience want to speak on this? We have a job description in the packet tonight, which we have, that we are going to either endorse or change. We, the board, it sounds like fairly unanimously, maybe not unanimously, have at least floated the idea of extending this. We are either gonna spend $75,000 on another study or not. Whether Joe's right about the minutes or Richard's right about the video, worst case scenario, we still have 15 months.
Yeah.
And we're never gonna get anywhere, and Larry, before you say it, I've written a ton of business plans, I could probably get one done by 11 o'clock tonight if you really want one. And we can all pick
Well,
numbers out of the air.
We'll still be here.
We can all pick numbers out of the air and we can come up with it. But the bottom line is, we're gonna go nowhere without an employee. And we can continue to throw part-time people out there. So at some point, the rubber has to meet the road, and the board has to vote what the board wants. Because it's not a town administrator function, this is ours, and this is our building. So the board needs to make some decisions. We've heard from Mr. Gunderson, we've heard from members of the finance committee, we've heard from members of the public. But at some point, we gotta make a decision. And you're never gonna go anywhere without an employee, and that's I don't care what study you do. If nobody is in there to put the plan together, you're gonna go nowhere with it. Larry, go ahead.
Well, thank you, Michael. I'm going to stick to my guns, however, in the extent, and I don't want to go to the, whether it's nonprofit or profit or so on. Just the discussion tonight, each of you have come up with different things that building could be used for, whether it's a kitchen, whether it's more art, whether it's not art. To me, at the very least, we need to come back, and I think some professional help would do this, and we've all written plans, and whether they're any good or not, who knows. But we should at least have someone come in and have the public discussion we're talking about and decide what's the best and best uses of that building. And where do we want to go with it? Right now, we've had success, but it's been, grab this and grab that. I'm uncomfortable with it. And we're hiring an employee to then put that in without having a good discussion about, maybe we've talked about kitchen. I would like to see a test kitchen there. That may be a stupid idea. It may cost us a lot more money than we need. I think we need some, and maybe we don't need a $75,000 study, and I'm not talking about the typical business plan. Well, sure, you make all these assumptions. But we at least should have a best use of the building and there's aspects of it that make sense to us. And yes, there'll be a revenue part of that. And no one expects that to, at least I don't. I'm not worried about being sustainable. I think we should always be worried about revenue and expenses. But to look at how we want to use that, to me, makes sense.
Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm somewhere between everybody else and Larry here. This won't work. I'm going to support this, but this won't work either unless we do pull the stakeholders in to create a plan, because you can't substitute one person's judgment on this to create the plan. There's got to be some outreach to find out who out there feels like they want to participate in this, and to what level and to what grant writing abilities. So this by itself isn't going to get you there. You absolutely have to have other people involved in this.
And I'm suggesting that. I think you need some professional help to pull it
I'm just
together.
not willing to spend the $75,000 to get as the entrance.
You're talking about this, just so
The
I'm
job
clear.
description.
Thank you.
The $75,000 is money into a black hole, because it's not, we're still likely going to have the stakeholders, likely going to have this position filled, and we're going to spend $75,000 besides. So that makes no sense to me.
Julie?
So, Don, I don't disagree with you in terms of having collaborating with the stakeholders, but we need somebody to drive that train, right? And
I'm
that
saying
has
I
to be-
agree.
I know, but that's what I'm saying is it really is, it dovetails into what we're trying to do. So I think the two issues that we're talking about, batting around, we are on the same page. We're getting this person to do that work. 2 part-time people, and Carolyn running a community center and trying to run that, could not possibly have all those discussions, so.
Unless Mary has anything to say, I'm going to call on Cindy, and then I'm going to call for a vote.
I just have a quick thing to say. During the cultural district designation process, we have held 2 stakeholders meetings, and I have it on the wall in my office. Feel free to come see. I'm in the midst of this as we speak. But I believe it was back in February 2018, and one was maybe in August, and one was for the Harwich Port Cultural District, and one's for the Harwich Center. Harwich Center embodying the cultural center. So there has been a start of this, and it will continue as we go through the process of the designation. Thank you.
Thank you. So we either need a motion to support the petition article or a motion to indefinitely postpone. Go ahead, Julie.
I move that we indefinitely postpone the study for the best used options for former Harwich Middle School, including recommendations for financial self-sufficiency.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
I hope not.
Roll call vote. Roll call vote.
He's
Don?
already got hours of minutes.
Don?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Larry?
I'm a no.
And I'm an aye. Thank you. Where do we go from here?
Somewhere quickly, I hope.
Motion to adjourn?
No, I'm keeping you staying until at least 9:30. Remember, we only have another week of this. Is there anyone in the audience that's looking to talk about any article that's on the warrant? I'm going to go back to the capital plan so that our department heads can exit. Any department head want to speak related to the capital items that have tentatively been removed?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Dave LeBlanc, Fire Chief, and I will make my comments brief as the night has been long already. So the fire department had 3 requests on the capital plan. The original was for the match of a grant for mini pumper. The idea was to consolidate 2 trucks into one. The town administrator fully funded that based on the way the changes had gone forward in the capital plan to make sure that we didn't lose an opportunity for the vehicle, and then if the grant funding came through, we would have that money in surplus. The other 2 were replacement vehicles for We have 2 staff vehicles that are at either station. We use them to chase the ambulance, or if there's only 1 personnel available to respond. Both of these are, one's an ex-police cruiser, one's the ex-deputy chief's vehicle. They're over 150,000 miles. One needs $5,800 worth of rust repair to it. They're both really in bad shape, and for emergency response vehicles that respond, and I got the statistics, it doesn't matter. The one's about, we moved about 400 calls last year, the other about 300. And we found out last week the fire inspector's car is no longer deemed roadworthy to go off Cape. So it's good for in town, but it's not off Cape. That we weren't planning on replacing for another 2 years. So, talking with the town administrator and understanding that the reductions that need to be made, I talked with the chairman this afternoon. If the grant comes through, we can, with some finagling, absorb the match within the fire department budget, I believe, is the budget as it stands.
Which is the 22,500.
The 22,500, correct. But the loss of these 2 cars, for me, especially with the uncertainty of the capital plan, capital budget, and what next year looks like, could I put them off for 1 more year? Probably, and survive. But if they're not, if we don't get them next year, we're just going to keep kicking this can down the road. One of them we tried to replace last year, and it never made it on the plan because last year was a tight budget, and I understand that. So I wouldn't stand here before you without saying these are urgent requests, but these are urgent requests. These are cars that the safety of our firefighters responding to incidents, in my mind, is starting to become in question. And it also goes to the safety of the public, because if they get in an accident and hit someone else, this isn't a reflection on maintenance or anything else. The DPW does a great job. It's just a reflection on the age of the vehicles and the use that they've had. So I would ask for the board's consideration in restoring those back to the capital plan. And again, we'll deal with the mini pumper if we get the grant, which is a crapshoot. We'll deal with that when the time comes.
Chief, what do you think the likelihood of that grant is based on what you're seeing across the state?
Well, the grants, vehicle grants have become a lot more successful than they have been, and especially because we're replacing 2 non-purpose built vehicles, a pickup truck and a military truck that have been converted into fire trucks. It should rank very high. I question when our luck is going to run out with the grants, because we've been very successful for quite a period of time, and I feel like that may move as the politics move. It's not supposed to be any politics in the grant program, but like everything there is. So, I don't know. I couldn't give you an honest answer. I would say right now 50-50 would be my guess. We're as good a chance of getting it as not.
Thank you. Questions, Larry? Comments?
I don't. I'm just hoping I'm hoping we can find the funds somewhere.
Julie?
No, and I know you're looking hard at all of these things prior to bringing them, so, and I appreciate that. You understand what we're coming.
Totally understand.
Mary?
How much are the 2 vehicles that you described, Chief?
130.
So 130 total,
130.
about 60 or 65,000. One would be a pickup truck and one would be an expedition. So we do what we normally do, give the newer car to the deputy chief and then kick a car down to the troops.
Okay, thank you.
Don?
So to be clear, the line item engines, other fire equipment's not what you're talking about the other vehicles.
Correct.
Okay, that's it.
Okay.
Chief, we're going to have a conversation either later tonight or at the next meeting, a detailed conversation about restoration, where we're going to go back to what
Okay.
else we might be able to cut.
Okay. Appreciate that. Thank you for time.
Deputy Police Chief or the Police Chief, anything?
No, Mr. Chair, as it stands right now, we don't have cruisers on the capital plan. We just had 2 items that were not targeted for reduction. So based on that, I have no comments.
Okay, thank you. I noticed David Spitz was here and left a little while ago. He was here, obviously, for the $250,000 request. Joe?
Thank you. So as you know, David chairs the Brooks Academy Museum Commission, and David has been in close contact with administration and the procurement. The $250,000 that's there for the Brooks Academy renovation project, and again, that's only for fiscal year 2023. $150,000 of it is set aside funds for an OPM, which is Owner's Project Manager. The town's required to have that before we go out to construction bid, and we're on the cusp of being able to go out on the construction for that. Now, construction in this case is the rehabilitation of the building, and that would be the lifting of the structure off the foundation to shore up the walls. Under the procurement laws, that's considered a construction project. It's a construction project that has a value that exceeds $1 million, and so the town must identify an owner's project manager. With the way that procurement was done previously, the town did not make any allocation for that. And so if we don't have the owner's project manager, which is scheduled to be funded through the Brooks Academy renovation project line item, then we can't go forward with the rest of the project. It begs the question then, why the heck did the administrator cut that? And the answer is because the other items that you look there are either regulated, such as the MS4 compliance, would have a equally detrimental effect, which would be the green communities utilities, because if we don't fund that, and that ends up not being the full amount, we would lose or could lose our green community status. The other items that were kept in are election equipment for the town clerk, which I understand is a mandate of the Secretary of State, technology replacements, and equipment replacements for the police department. What was also looked to be removed is $50,000 to begin the beautification of the villages of Harwich, $75,000 for the privacy fence at the community center, the vehicles that you heard Chief Blank talk about, 2 golf vehicles for $90,000, and again, that's coming out of free cash, not golf improvement fund, the ball field mower for the DPW, and 4 other vehicles for DPW. Quite frankly, this list that I've presented to you is a proposal, and it's meant to mirror the priorities I've talked about before. But at some point in time, something's got to give, because you can see that in that spreadsheet, we have what the town usually does, $384,000 for stabilization. We fund that through free cash. The town usually does $500,000 in OPEB. We have $250,000 in the operating budget. $250,000 would come from free cash if the town was going to be consistent with its annual contribution to OPEB. You have some of the articles we've already talked about, which has been the standard annual contributions. We have a snow and ice deficit. We have mandated, contractual obligations in good faith with collective bargaining. We have wastewater operating costs. We have other personnel costs, and then a small item for prior year bills. But if you were to accept the reductions, that would fund over $3 million, and in many cases, standard contributions that the town makes year in and year out that usually come from free cash.
Thank you, Joe.
So we're not even talking about, quote, saving free cash, although that goes from a $200 balance in free cash to a $32,000 remaining balance for free cash. So that's the conundrum that we're faced with.
Thank you, Joe. Comments from the board, Don?
I'll start by chipping away at the base of the tree. And under no circumstances would I have ever gone for a privacy fence that boils down to a promise that was made by Rec and Youth. It should have come out of their own revolving fund. That's the kind of thing that I would expect them to do. If they made a promise, keep the promise. So as for the other things, I don't know, I'm going to have to think about this, because there is no, let's wait until tomorrow for fire department vehicles particularly. There may not be a tomorrow for some people. I've always been supportful of their equipment, and going off schedule really is going to hurt us. So I need time to think about that.
Mary?
That's the same one that bothers me. I thought that was a piece part of the 450. I didn't realize it had its own line here. But that's the one that concerns me, is the 2 cars. Because next year's not any better. In fact, that chart that we had for 5 years, next year looks worse.
Julie?
No, I agree. I mean, I need more time to think about it too. There's a lot, there's a lot here that, I'm not comfortable just cutting, but we need to look hard, so.
Larry?
I think I asked this before, Joel, and I've forgotten already. But what's the net effect of the green communities? well, 437, and you say we'll give up money if we don't do that?
I may have the application here, but going from memory.
167,000.
Thank you. The town has to put up that amount of money. We have to apply for the approval of it, and if it's received, although it's more often than not when, if it's received, it's offset.
So-
But if we don't have the money and we don't get the grant, we're no longer part of the green communities.
So my follow-up question is the 437,400, whatever, 400 plus, do we need to spend all that to get to green communities, or could we spend could we do part of that and still get that 106,016 and give us some money elsewhere?
My understanding is what we're looking to do, there's several different utility things, boilers, what have you.
I saw that, but those boilers, do you have
We
to,
have to show the commitment up front.
do you have to each, I mean, the boilers, can you separate that out and save money and still get the 100 and some thousand from green?
I hate to use this
I don't
phrase,
need that
but
answer
it's
right
all-
now, but I'd like to understand that. We have to spend it all to get that, the grant money.
Joe?
Yeah, it's getting late. I don't need it now.
No, I
I'm-
believe it's an all or nothing. I can get the background material for that.
All right, Joe, go ahead, Mary.
On that, we're spending, we have to spend 437 to get 160?
Yes.
So I wouldn't do that with my money. What does being a green community do for us?
So what it is my understanding is, we demonstrate the items that need to be replaced. They equal $437,400. And if we are successful with the grant, it is reduced from that number to about $160,000
What we
that
pay?
we would have to pay.
Ah,
So similar to the Chiefs, it's
Okay.
a grant offset. The difference being, it's less of an offset than what the chief has.
okay. I had it
So
backwards, thank
It's
you.
more likely we could do the chief's offset, because it's 22,500, perhaps through the operating budget. It is not likely that we can do the 160,000 offset, other than free cash.
Okay, thank you.
So Joe, for next week, can we get a snapshot of where we are? I'm getting emails, memos, but we have the original budget. We voted the free cash or the revenue projections we saved to 10%. But originally, we were presented with a budget, 79 million and change, that was 6.65% ahead of last year, on a much lower number on the revenue projections. But it didn't include the $750,000 cost of living increase that we're contemplating. So I don't know where we're at. What has that percentage gone to? What has the revenue gone up to? Can we get a sheet that shows us a snapshot of what percentage we're at with the changes that we've made?
I don't know what I can commit to with the finance director enjoying
Maybe we could just do the
her
best,
vacation.
the best we can on a one-pager
Yeah,
would be great.
But what I want to make clear is, she's on a well-earned vacation.
I know.
And what I'm getting to is the 750,000 for wage adjustments, it doesn't move the needle because we have the funding for it in free cash.
Okay, but we're also now having the conversations, I got 2 pages of notes on restorations that people want to make that were enhancements of services that, if I'm reading the board correct, at least 70% of them they want to consider. And now we have a whole bunch of vehicles that we took out for good reason. So I'd kind of like to have a snapshot of where we're at. And then if you would entertain this tonight in the board, we have a $250,000 line item in the budget for OPEB. We've now added 250,000 here. If we pay for the OPEB just in the operating budget, the 250, we could conceivably take the 250 and add it back here, correct?
Correct.
And then on a year like this, where we have such a budget increase because of wastewater debt, because of schools, and because of COLAs, maybe this isn't the year to do the $384,000 stabilization payment. I think that's a decision the board should probably make tonight, to give the town administrator some direction. But we can't just keep saying we're gonna restore stuff without changing policy by either taking the $250,000 OPEB payment out of the operating budget. That's one option, and paying for it out of free cash. Or just not paying for it out of free cash. And then the only other numbers, Joe, to look at, if you look at the IT stuff that you left in there, and I know you said fire and police, it's not a lot of money, $65,000. If we go ahead and the board makes the decision, which I'm gonna put on the agenda for next week, to buy Office 365 with the ARPA money, there's still a leftover bucket. Can we use that bucket, money in that bucket, to do this IT stuff on here?
I don't know directly, but that's a great question to evaluate for sure.
Okay, so to the board on restoration or just not spending all this money, one or the other, is the board comfortable removing the stabilization payment this year and removing the OPEB, extra OPEB payment off of this sheet?
What's,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just so everybody recalls this properly, we dipped into stabilization, but we paid that back.
The following year.
The following year. It's a rainy day fund. I feel it like clouds are rolling in again. It's not like we're borrowing money from it, but we paid what we had, and it's still there as a stabilization fund. Love to be able to enhance it, but at the cost of this, no.
So you would be in favor of removing the $385 from free cash?
Yep.
Mary?
just a question, Joe, how much is in that fund? Is that fairly decent
We have a
amount of
good
money?
balance,
Yeah, we do have a good balance, and I'm gonna avail myself of the finance director's
It's not like it's in a
excellent
stock
budget book.
portfolio either.
Stabilization as of December 31st, 2021, was $5.5 million.
Anything else, Mary?
No, we could take a ride on that.
Julie?
So, just thinking forward, and again, knowing that it's nothing promised till we have money in our hands, but the feds and the monies that we may be getting separate from ARPA, I'm talking infrastructure, et cetera, we could even possibly get some money on that level, use that towards our green communities expenses, so that we could then take those monies and put it back towards stabilization, correct?
Are you asking, can we use ARPA for green communities?
Not ARPA, I'm talking about the federal funds that we don't know when they'll be dispersed, so I'm just hoping in the next fiscal year they'll be dispersed in terms of,
So I'd have to talk to Sean about that. My only hesitation is I believe that's a federal grant program, and they don't look kindly on federal funds to federal funds. However, we might be able to free up and use it somewhere else to have the same effect.
okay. I'm just thinking that we may have more liquidity in the future and within the year than we have now, so that we wouldn't have to make these cuts.
Would you be comfortable taking the $385 out of here?
384.
So $384 to restore some of what we have?
Yes, I would, because we have, I mean, that's a good balance.
Yeah.
Larry?
Mr. Chairman, I apologize. Something of that magnitude, though, I think it would be appropriate to make a motion. And a
We
vote.
will, I'm just trying to get there.
Sorry, thank you. I'll
Larry?
be quiet.
You asked two questions. Am I comfortable? No. Do we need to do it? Yes. My concern actually is also, we've asked to increase our revenue expectations. And what that will do next year is reduce the free cash we have going into next year. So unfortunately, we're rolling this problem forward to some extent. And I hope Julie's right and we get some extra money coming in, because we're, in some sense, we have to do it now, okay, but we're going to dig a little bit deeper hole for next year as well.
Don?
Mr. Chair, I move that we remove $384,000 as the amount for stabilization and replace that with zero.
Second.
Moved and seconded, roll call vote, Don?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Larry?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. I'm glad the police chief stayed. This is where I want to zing the police chief. In the operating budget, we have, in the police department operating budget, we have 3 cruisers. Do we know the value of that 3 cruisers in the operating budget?
May I assist the chief as he approaches?
Go ahead.
Only because
He doesn't have to, he just might want to argue with me.
It's $157,000.
How How much?
$157,000 for the three.
And if you look at the finance director's memorandum, it's the one, two, three, four, fifth page in her update. And Mr. Chairman, you had asked the question last week, why is that in the operating budget? Because it's a capital outlay in operating, because it's essentially a churn item, if you will. All the other vehicles that you see in the capital outlay plan are expected to last at least a decade, generally speaking. Cruisers have a much lower shelf life, and so we've been handling that in years past, not the last few recent years, but in years past, as an operating capital expense, because they are turned over so quickly.
Thank you.
And when they get turned over, they get put back into the town's fleet as a town car somehow.
Thank you. My suggestion to the board would be to remove them from the operating budget, put them into capital. With the move that we just did restores some of it, and then there's one other request off of here that I would ask that we make. But by removing the police cruisers from the operating budget, it will free up room to add back the position that John Rendon so desperately needs, and the other list of stuff, and then maybe have a shot at reducing the operating budget on top of everything. I think it makes most sense to remove them from the operating budget and put them under capital. Larry?
Yeah, I don't disagree with that, although I think you requested before an update of where we stand on this when we go back and forth on the, because we've added $384,000 back to the capital budget, right? We use that stabilization. So now we're taking half of that approximately for the police cars. That leaves us enough for the, I think, the fire.
I didn't say I was gonna approve them.
No, I'm just trying to work through,
Take them out of the budget.
I'm just trying to work through the math on this.
Yeah.
Be sure we have
Yeah.
enough going through,
Well,
so.
I think we have a debate coming up on what we're gonna buy and what we're not gonna buy. But to get it out of the operating budget gives us some wiggle room on some of the things that we might wanna add back.
Yeah, I'll go with that. I'm trying to do the math in my head too, though.
But we're not going to add those tonight. So there's no real urgency to,
I'm thinking about the spreadsheet that we get from the town administrator next week would make a whole lot more sense if we gave him some direction.
can't we do that informally? Just say we want to go in that direction?
We can, but Joe said earlier he'd rather have a motion. And I agree with Joe. I think it's time that we start making some decisions, because we're running out of time.
Well, then we move that we move the police cars from the operating budget to the capital budget.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Larry?
I'm an aye if we're going to vote.
Do you want to identify a funding source, or is that to merely place?
Putting it under the free cash pile.
Because that's why I was trying to do the math. That's what we need the next discussion on.
Julie?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Joe, we had a conversation, and now I mentioned it earlier. Sorry, Chief. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say I completely understand, the difficulty you're facing in trying to deal with these budget issues, and I appreciate the support of the Finance Committee and the board. I just want to remind you that, we've had several tough budget years in a row here. Last year, we had 0 cruises. We requested 0. The year before that, we had 1. So that's why there's a request for 3 on
I'll ask
this
you
year.
the question that I'm sure Finance has already asked you. You are getting rid of stuff, right? We're not adding to the stock.
No. Well, yeah, we're not adding to the fleet. Nope, absolutely not.
Whatever you get.
It's either, as the town administrator pointed out, sometimes it will be bumped down into, other town departments to save them, money. In other words, like an emergency vehicle with 100,000 miles on it is tired, and we don't feel comfortable with sending our folks out on it much beyond that. However, it's okay for driving around town, and it can save the town some money that way. So we are not adding to the fleet.
Okay, thank you, Chief.
Okay.
We discussed OPEB. There's $250,000 in OPEB going into that's already in the operating budget. Now we've added $250,000 to this. Are we comfortable with only a $250,000 payment this year in lieu of everything else that we're up against?
That's a $500,000 if we keep it
Yes.
this way.
So if we remove,
I
I'm talking
remove that
about
we remove the 250,000 from the operating,
from free,
from free cash.
free cash.
From operating, right?
No, free cash and leave it in operating because it's already debiting there.
Okay.
You made that motion?
I second it.
Moved and seconded. Roll call vote. Larry?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Joe, I assume on the DPW vehicles, I guess first and foremost, I think the police chief, I've spoken to him independently, made a great case for his vehicles. Fire chief did tonight as well, those two vehicles. The pumper truck, chief, is that something you're willing to sacrifice this year if you don't get the grant? Or do we leave it in and we gamble?
So I would say that I would be willing to gamble that we don't get it. So I'm willing to sacrifice it. It was originally intended as a grant to downsize our fleet. We're still gonna operate just like we operate today if we don't get it.
Okay.
You know, so we'll just keep putting it in for the grant and see if we can get it down the road. So that I'm completely comfortable with sacrificing if we have to.
And then maybe we can find the 22,500 somewhere else in some of this money for, instead of going into your.
I would appreciate that, or we could split it, or however we make it work, but I'm agreeable to whatever you come up with.
Okay. I guess to Don's point on privacy fence and then the other reduction, I guess we should take them up independently.
Okay.
The $75,000 cut on the privacy fence, does anyone want to support the privacy fence this year, or do we continue to Band-Aid it for another year, given the situation we're in?
I'm in favor of doing it, but not with that funding source. They should do it out of the revolving fund. If it's a promise made, it could be a promise kept.
Joe?
So it was a request of the facilities director, so I can see if there's latitude within the revolving funds at community center to get that done.
It was mostly about the athletic fields. So I'm not sure why it's part of the facilities at all.
Mary, any thoughts on that? Is that okay?
On the privacy fence, I'm okay with either cutting it or revolving fund.
Larry?
It needs to be cut right now. We're looking at everything else, and this is, we have to prioritize, and so unfortunately, it's where we are.
Julie?
Yeah, I'm fine with that as well.
Joe, do you need a motion on that? I think the direction is to go back and see if it can be paid for out of the revolving fund, otherwise it stays on the cut list.
That's how I took it. Thank you.
The $50,000 for beautifying the villages?
We're just gonna have to stay ugly.
Can he quote you on that?
Maybe Lane could find some money in his budget to beautify the center. Larry, do you want to bring that one back, or you want to leave it gone?
I want to leave it gone.
Okay, Julie?
Same.
Don?
Either way.
All right, I think the direction is to leave that one gone for now, Joe. The $250,000 for the historic building, for the project manager. I don't see how we can not do that with the investment that we made last year.
How do you spend that kind of money without a manager?
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
Joe?
The only expansion on that I would say is, this is hopefully one of the last big projects where the town had not previously accounted for that. The direction I've been giving staff since we overhauled procurement is be mindful of those bigger projects. Granted, there are very few that rise to that level other than a brand-new building, like a fire station, but as we replace lighting structures and things like that, department heads are far more focused. And I don't know that they were the problem to begin with years ago. I think it was an administrative problem. But they now know that we have to account for those ancillary procurement costs. So this is one of the last big ones. If we don't do this, we're not doing the procurement correctly, and we can't go forward.
Can I get a positive motion on that?
I move
To add it
that-
back in?
I move that we restore the $250,000 back in to the capital plan for the Brooks Academy renovation project,
Paid for
Second.
by free cash?
paid for by free cash.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call vote, Larry?
aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. My laptop died, so I can't keep going down the list, so I'm gonna have to get more next week. So to kind of get where we're at with the budget, if we could get as close as we can, understanding Carol's way, that would be great. I don't think we voted Chase Library tonight, when we were talking about supporting the petition articles. I don't think we actually took a vote on Chase Library.
I thought we did.
I thought we did.
Yeah, we did.
Well, somebody out back that we
I thought I
can't
made a
mention,
motion to-
She's gonna tell us.
Yeah,
We did? We voted? Great.
Someone out
Uh,
back.
There's two positions that have placeholders, and part of the agenda tonight was to remove placeholders, if we could remove placeholders. One was for the housing advocate as a separate article, and one was for the cultural center director as a separate article. The question is, both of these seem to be board initiatives, and I believe they belong in the operating budget, not as separate articles. And I would go to discussion from the board, and I'd start with Don.
Agree.
Mary?
I didn't understand that.
So Joe put placeholders in so
Yeah.
that we could vote these independently outside of
Okay.
the operating budget, or he already has them baked into the operating budget so
Oh.
that they would be part of the operating budget.
Oh, I thought we had to do both. We do not have to do both.
Go ahead, Joe.
No, and that was my original error, that I thought it required an article when it said it required board approval. But on further reflection, when you read it, it says the board has to approve the funding. The funding would be in the operating budget, it's presently in the operating budget.
So you're okay removing the separate
Yeah.
articles?
Yeah.
Julie?
Yeah, I'm okay.
Larry?
Yeah, although, not to bring back history too much, but in the past, we've had decided that new positions would be placed on the warrant articles because they're long-lasting rather than operational. I'm okay with where the board wants to go, but it's different than what our position's been in the past. So we, the essence is so we don't add employees without taking into account that they're forever in some sense. So that was the reason that we placed them articles before. I'm going to argue that, they're necessary, but my caveat again on the cultural centers, I still want to look at a plan going forward. My question to Joe is, in the budget, I couldn't quite get this, but we had, during our department head meetings, we had, I think, Michael, you mentioned I forget which one now, but we've had the harbor master needed a part-time position.
Yep.
We had about 4 or 5 department heads that really needed part-time positions.
Yep.
Are these baked into the operating plan? Because I would like to give those high priority.
They are not. These are things we're gonna have to vote to
We're gonna-
restore. Well,
Oh.
not restore, because they were in
Enhance.
enhancement of services, not positions.
So we're gonna bring those back, because when you read those made very, very good cases that those were needed. The harbor master assistant, the conservation assistant.
If we can't get to it within the next 24 minutes, we'll vote it on Monday night.
Okay, I'm okay with that. I want to make sure that's included.
On Monday, can we start at 5:30 to try to,
We might have to, because we didn't hit the articles I thought we'd hit, but, go ahead, John?
Michael, thank you. John Chory. Just a quick question.
Sure.
On those two heads, the cultural center director and the housing advocate, I was led to believe that they had to be in the warrant because they were new full-time positions. Is that a
Joe?
correct statement or not?
Well, Don's gonna answer that.
they have to be on an article to add them to the staffing plan. They do not have to be funded in an article.
Say that again?
The staffing plan is really what the article's for the townspeople to approve a change in the staffing plan. There is no provision for these positions now. Once that gets approved, we can fund them in the budget.
So they
Okay,
can
but
be
so
to
if they're not
clarify.
approved, the articles aren't approved, then they're not funded.
Then you can't have them in the staffing plan.
Okay, I thought it was the other, yeah, okay.
Joe, tell us your take on that.
Just a point, that's all.
I'm not, I didn't understand it the way it was described.
Well, I think what Don has been our past practice, whether it's that way or not.
So that's
Well,
what.
the charter calls for a staffing plan.
I'm aware of the charter provisions, so when I started to evaluate positions that may be contemplated by the town, I went through several years past warrants, and the one that I was trying to rely upon was facilities manager. And facilities manager was incorporated within the operating budget of Public Works. The board adopted the Public Works budget, you were aware, the board at the time was aware of that position. What the charter requirement is under 453, if I remember correctly, is that any new full-time position cannot be added unless it's endorsed by the Board of Selectmen in the operating budget. So these two positions that you're talking about right now are in the operating budget under the administration line item.
So if they're endorsed by us, they don't have to be approved by town meeting. They only have to be
Still new
approved
positions.
on the budget.
That's my understanding of the charter, but I'm not suggesting
Again, I'm not sure that you have to deal with this tonight, because it's a matter of what legality, because the charter does call for your vote at town meeting on a staffing plan.
All right, so
But it
let's-
doesn't say anything about funding anything in that article.
So let's
And
get,
it doesn't say, or does it say that a staffing plan has to include new positions?
Yeah, that was to stop staff growth.
Yeah.
all right, so let's clarify that this week if we can for next week. But does the board want to remove those two warrant articles? And if so, we need a motion to remove the placeholder for the cultural center director and a motion to remove the placeholder for the housing advocate.
Do we want to remove them if we're not sure if we need them?
So they're not in the warrant. These are placeholders that staff has put in. You would still go through your motions on keep or kill, and if keep, accept and adopt.
So you want us to, a motion to kill these?
There's no need. If the board doesn't take any motion, it dies on its own.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I want some clarification, because my personal feeling is it's good to have in the town warrant, because then everyone buys into it, the staffing.
We'll have clarification by next week. Job descriptions. You've all gotten them? Do we want to vote those job descriptions tonight with changes? Do you want to comment on them? And I'll start with Mary.
I thought they were both pretty good. I thought they had enough specificity, if you can say that word, for the person to know what they were doing, but there was enough leg room in there to add things as they came up. How's that?
Don?
They're fine as they are.
Julie?
Yeah, they're fine for me.
Larry?
Yeah, no further discussion.
Can I get a motion? Mary's choking. Julie, you want to do it?
Sure. Hold on. I move, excuse me, that we approve, let me do them separately. The job description for the Director of Cultural Affairs as presented.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Comment?
No comment on this, Michael, but that, since I just want to back up just a second, for the Council on Aging too, that was a
Let me
full-time.
grab this vote, and then we'll go
Okay,
to you on
yeah.
that. Roll call vote. Don?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Larry?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. One more motion, and then I'll get to you. Julie,
Okay.
go ahead.
I move that we approve the job description for the housing advocate as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call. Don?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Larry?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Go ahead.
John Chori, Finance Committee. Just, should we put the Council on Aging's new full-time position too in with the housing advocate and cultural center, just as a clarification, that's all. Since it's 3 new full-time positions.
Joe, go ahead.
I have the charter reference, if you'd like me to read that.
Go ahead.
But to the last question, it talks about new, and the program specialist is already in the classification plans. That's not new.
Okay.
452 of
Catch
the
that.
charter says the creation of any new full-time compensated position which requires the approval of the Board of Selectmen. These two require your approval because they're positions under the administrator, which require the approval of the Board of Selectmen shall not become effective until the position has been funded by a vote of town meeting. So it has been funded by a vote of town meeting.
Okay.
So that,
We've always taken that
so
to mean,
that's
though, that
funding through the operating budget.
Yeah.
Correct.
I go back about 25 years, and they used to actually have an article to empower the town to have that position, to create it, and then fund it.
So anyone that wants this on the agenda for next week for discussion, email me specifically what you want to talk about, and then we'll talk about it.
Okay.
I'm not going to do it tonight. Joe, going from J down through L, is there anything that we missed that you think we can vote tonight? Because we're already here really late, so what's the difference?
No, certainly not for tonight. If I could just sort of round out that discussion by saying, I think I heard you tonight, I know that during your joint budget hearings, there were any number of members either on the board or the finance committee, or in a few cases jointly, where one or two members said that something should be restored. But I think the appropriate action of the board would be to vote specific motions to restore over enhancement of services. But I also want to make the emphasis that program budgets were not cut. It's a question of whether their enhancements were adopted or not. And so I'm not aware that there was any action taken at either of the joint hearings that would have constituted a vote to restore.
Can you give us an idea what the motion would be for the $11,750 requested by John Rendon?
So I think.
How would you want that motion
So
to read?
generally, what you'd be looking to do is you'd be amending the salary and wages line item for that department to increase it by that dollar amount, and then you would state the new amount, and for the purpose of funding the seasonal assistant harbor master, or whatever the correct title is.
Yep, seasonal, yep.
Mary, do you want to take a shot at that?
I move that we vote to amend the salaries and wage line item in the harbor master's budget by, I think it was 11,750. 11,750. To add the part-time seasonal assistant harbor master.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Questions, Larry?
No, I'm ready to go.
No,
Julie?
I don't have any questions.
Mary?
No.
Don? Okay, roll call vote. Don?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Larry?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. The other one I think we could get done, if the board wants to get done, is we had a request by Community Center Director Carolyn, and their full request was for $4,800 for all of the extra events she does to fund them. The duck toss and many Halloween boutique. I'd be willing to maybe not give the entire amount of money because she's done such a great job with donations, but propose a $2,400 increase.
So moved.
And it'd be a $2,400 increase to the community center expenses line item.
Julie, here you go.
That was your motion, right,
That
Don?
was the motion.
Second.
Moved in second. Any discussion on the $2,400
No.
to the community center?
No.
Roll call, Larry,
Aye.
Julie,
Aye.
Mary,
Aye.
Don,
Aye.
and I'm an aye. The, Joe, can you, let's tackle this DPW one tonight, the $60,000. Will you give an explanation so that we can vote that back in?
Thank you. So that was incorrectly marked as an enhancement of service. And as you know, we have had that in the program for, I think, at least 2 years now. So it was not an enhancement of service. It is an ongoing budget item, and so I would recommend that it be restored. And that's what you can see in the finance director's memo to you this evening.
Motion on that, to restore the $60,000 to the DPW?
I move that we restore $60,000 to the DPW budget in the expense line item for, what's it for, Joe?
I'm trying to find that memo.
My
I
compu-
had,
My computer died.
Is it the
60,000.
the May 18th one?
DPW.
Yeah, it was
Oh,
60,000.
comfort station cleaning.
Thank you.
And was that
Sounds so nice that way.
Was that seconded?
Second.
Okay, Larry seconded it. Roll call vote. Don?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Larry?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. The, for clarification for the board, Joe, going back to the cemetery director, has that conversation happened? Is the board to feel comfortable that Robin will have support so that she can have her time off on her vacations and that the board doesn't have to hire somebody else?
So the conversations are not complete, but to the latter half of the question, yes, I think the town should absolutely take comfort that administration will create a plan that supports all of our employees to use their time and to also ensure that we have appropriately trained staff to provide backup.
Okay.
Board comfortable with that? Don? Mary?
I am.
Julie?
My only question on that is, because there's sort of an expertise in that, and the info, are we saying it's at a dedicated department like the DPW, or, I mean, or how is that gonna work?
Stability is what you're getting to.
Yes.
For me, it makes the most sense to be at the Department of Public Works and to cross-train appropriate staff with the Department of Public Works.
Okay, thanks.
One other request that we had through, I believe it was Recreation, was Town Band was looking for another $2,400, or was it $2,000?
It was $2,500 to round it up to $5,000, and that was me through the Peter Dieback on request of the Town Band, and I asked him where it was. He said it would be for Recreation. So Rec didn't have the chance to get into that. I would like to plead the case for the $2,500 to be added. What they're looking to do is have refresh the uniforms, create banners around our town bandstand, and do a little marketing. And I think nothing says we're getting past pandemic like resuming our town band.
I moved to restore, enhance $2,500 for the town band's use,
Get paid for out of?
the budget.
But-
That's all you're getting out of me.
I took all of these other votes to be through the operating budget.
Right. Would that be through Recreation?
Rec-
Right.
Through
Recreation.
through sponsorship by Recreation.
Okay, moved, and who seconded it?
I did.
Mary seconded it. Conversation, Larry?
None.
Okay, roll call vote, Larry?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
And Don?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Probably, what's that one?
What about Amy's shed?
So Amy's shed, that was the other one. Sounds like $3,000 for a new shed or repairs to the old shed. I stood outside of it and shook it, and I don't see any reason we can't put plywood floors in there and reinforce it and put some shovels in there. And I would say that we could throw $1,000 at it and make it very usable.
And what about, I had suggested Albro House. We got a
whole house?
building with nothing over there.
The whole house?
We did tear off the shed off the
Whole
back of
house.
that when we
Well, because it's falling down.
I would suggest that we put a motion out for $1,000 for shed repair for Conservation Commission. And I don't see why we couldn't pay for that out of free cash.
I would argue we may be able to do it presently with existing funds. And it's not, I mean, I appreciate the conservation agent bringing it up. It's a shed that the town needs a town hall. And so I'd be more than willing to see if we can't rustle some stuff together. If I
So
can
no
use that.
action needed, and you'll find the money to put some new plywood on the floor.
I would urge you to direct me to do that, and as God is my witness.
Are we directing Joe to do that?
Probably
We
have
are.
plywood in my
We are.
basement.
Exactly what I was thinking.
Yep.
What'd you say, Julie?
Joe, I
Probably
wanna
plywood in
be
my
walking out the
basement.
back door by 10, so.
We could have built it tonight.
The last one, and I guess, the last one is Amy's request for someone to take minutes and a part-time assistant. And you and I had a brief conversation about that, because we are sourcing out some of the other minutes. Do we want to bring that back next week? I do have a dollar amount
To me,
somewhere.
it's two distinct things that we're talking about. The town has the ability to advertise for any number of board secretaries, and we've been endeavoring to build a pool of board secretaries. And I'll turn to a camera somewhere and say, it's a great job for someone that may be waiting for little kids to return from school. I would not genderize the role, but any parent that supports kids at school can do this while the kids are in school. The other item, the other part-timer becomes more problematic. Because with the part-timers, and that's why I was reluctant to do the same for the cemetery administrator, we do not have any location in town hall where that person could be seated. We can't assume that we're gonna share desks. We've learned that lesson from pandemic, and so it just becomes more problematic.
So the request was for $25,450 for a 19-hour-a-week person as an assistant. Any board member want to wait till next week and have Joe present us with a different number?
I do, because we have a couple of these. We have that one that makes sense to me. We talked about the harbor master. We have health director wanting a part-time, full-time assistant. We have couple enhancements I think we should bring back and discuss a little more, because they made
And I'm reluctant to do.
training
pools, so-
for the finance
Yeah.
director made a lot of sense.
Can we put that on the agenda for next week?
Part-time to full-time health inspector, that board had already voted that.
Right.
We're in the process of hiring someone. So that was done for 22, and that would still be in the books for 23.
Okay, that I didn't know it was going to continue to 23. I wanted to be sure it was continued
Mary.
then.
I'm just reluctant to go much further, because when you add all this up, we're gonna,
That's what I'm hoping
Have a
Joe's gonna
problem.
do.
Yeah, and for me, when
Well-
you're talking positions, you're talking a desk, you're talking a phone, you're talking equipment, whether it's benefited or not. And so those other positions weren't factored in to
I see
the
your
budget I'm recommending.
yeah.
I also just want to put a quick reminder out there. The board has told me, and I've responded to the board, we have the position of engineer. We do not have the position of surveyor. And to me, to get an engineer, we have to address surveyor. And none of that's contemplated because that's been out of the budget for 3 years now.
Okay,
So those are my concerns tonight and going forward.
Okay.
so we'll broaden this conversation next week. Old business, discussion and possible vote to approve the committee appointments
Can we
recommended
wait
by.
until next week on that? I don't want to stay here for another 15 minutes. And I'm not just going to make a motion, so please.
Don, we've put this on 4 weeks in a row. I mean, this is getting,
I
and
request that
every
you
week
do
there's
that.
a new article about it.
Sandy.
I'll do whatever the board's pleasure is, but I think it's time to get it out of our way. But, up to the board. Board?
It's 10,
I'm
it's 10.
trying to avoid a
Okay.
big discussion because
Okay, next week it is. We're gonna
Okay.
put that back on again. Actually, if we, contracts, discussion and possible vote on the Cranberry Valley Golf Course request for proposals for food concession. Joe?
We got one, it's a good one, and it's a returning one.
It's a great,
Recommend that we.
It's a great one, yeah.
Yeah.
that you,
Turning to a
award the
different place.
concession To Ashwood Food Service Incorporated. We know them in other parts of town as Jake Rooney's. The name to be determined, but I definitely recommend that the board approve awarding the concession to that proposer.
I move we award the concession to Ashwood
yeah, under the terms that they've presented.
under
us.
the, under what term? Under the
Under the
terms,
terms that they
as
under the
submitted.
terms that they submitted
Yeah, the second.
for the Cranberry Valley Golf Course.
moved and seconded, discussion?
No, that's a very good
No, it's good.
proposal.
If we wait long enough, we can have breakfast there.
Roll call, Larry,
Aye.
Julie, Mary,
Aye.
Don,
Aye.
and I'm an aye. And I would say that was a great proposal, and it'd
Yeah.
be great to have Jake Rooney's at the golf course. Can Oh, come on up. I thought you were on the finance committee. Sorry.
No. Oh, hi, Kate Lowe, Master Mashwood Food Service. Just wanted to say thank you very much, Board and the Town of Harwich, for accepting our bid, and we are very anxiously looking forward to having a great season with you guys.
Yeah.
And working with you again.
Thank you.
On behalf
I'm
of my
so-
dad and Ward also.
I'm sorry, I should have asked, because I would have called that earlier. But
Oh, okay, that's
thank
all
you for
right.
watching our meeting.
But you're welcome to stay.
Town administrators report,
Not yelling.
Selectman, Don?
No.
Mary,
No,
Larry,
No.
Julie?
I have to say something.
Go ahead, get in
go
there.
for it.
So I participated with Peter Hughes's effort for the, the yellow tape around the hydrants. I did Pleasant Bay Road and Bay Road, and I think it's just a great way to show support.
Thank
And thank you to Peter Hughes.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Our motion to adjourn,
So moved.
Second.
roll call, Larry?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Aye.
Everyone else can wait.